Chapter 1545. Those who had met Pang Zhijing in the past would have thought that she was a simple-minded girl who didn't seem to care about anything and didn't need to. In fact, people who didn't seem to care about anything would spend a lot of energy and focus on something that others couldn't compare to once they became obsessed with it. That was why she broke free from his grasp at the edge of the cliff so that he could live well. Her love was strong and resolute. As for Xiao Ho, because of the injustice he had suffered when he was young, there was a hole in his heart that couldn't be healed even after he applied medicine on it. Pang Zhijing's appearance was like a clear spring that washed away the poison and helped him heal the wounds slowly. In this world, there was finally someone whose arrival coincided with the hole in his heart. Xiao Ho, let bygones be bygones, okay? Pang Zhijing tilted her head and said mischievously. Xiao Ho's gaze was still on her wounds. But the wounds are still there. She couldn't let go of them. Do you dislike them because they don't look good? Pang Zhijing seemed to have ignited an explosive. She hugged the quilt and glared at him. Alright, I didn't expect you to be such a superficial person. I've finally seen through you. Fortunately, I haven't married you yet. There's still time to turn back. Let's break up. The gloomy and sorrowful atmosphere dissipated with her shout. Xiao Ho didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What was going on? Why was this little rascal still acting like she used to? He pulled her and the quilt back into his arms and laughed. You're abandoning your husband and daughter so soon. No, I'll take our daughter away. You can live alone. She naturally knew that he didn't mean that, but she just wanted to find fault with him. I'm just afraid that you don't think they look good. Xiao Ho raised his hand and tapped her nose with an affectionate smile. Pang Zhijing smiled. What's there to be afraid of? The wounds have healed and don't hurt anymore. Moreover, Yan Luo has developed a lot of good medicine to remove scars. It won't take long for me to recover to my former self. That's good, he said softly as he rubbed his fingers against the scars on her shoulder. At this point, it was about time to end the topic. Suddenly, she blinked her eyes. Her hands were all over his smooth and elastic skin, making her heart stir. Just now, he had teased her until her entire body was steaming hot. Now, he was stuck again, which made her a little angry. Pang Zhijing rolled her eyes and put her hands on Xiao Ho's shoulders. With a push, Xiao Ho was pushed onto the bed by her. The two of them were naked to begin with. Being so close to each other, the friction generated heat. Pang Zhijing finally had the sense of accomplishment of turning over a surf and singing. She sat on top of him, and the corner of her mouth hooked up into a very flirtatious smile. She bent down and caressed his face. Beauty, you have to serve me well tonight. Xiao Ho's entire body tensed up, and the fire in his eyes seemed to be rekindling. He said ambiguously, I will definitely live up to your expectations. Just a moment ago, Pang Zhijing was still very satisfied with his cooperation, but in the next moment, the world spun, and her whole person was separated. Tonight she was going to be a queen. But before she could finish, he stopped her. Don't worry, you'll be satisfied. After he finished speaking, he didn't give her a chance to speak again. And this night, other than broken syllables, she didn't say a single word. This was the story of digging a hole for herself, but she still had to jump into it. Jing's strength was the interpretation. This night, Pang Zhijing felt that her waist was about to break. But a certain someone still refused to stop, and worked hard. Sure enough, a man who was abstinent was terrible, but a wolf who was abstinent was even more terrible. Jing's strength was once again the interpretation of this sentence. When the darkness faded and dawn was about to arrive, the bed that had been shaking all night finally quieted down. Xiao Ho contentedly hugged the person who had no strength to sleep tightly in his arms. Losing something and then regaining it, there was nothing more satisfying than this. Shameless, you bad silver. Bad silver. In her sleep, she muttered softly. He smiled, but hugged her even more tightly. Life and death contract, Yuzi said. And on the top of a mountain thousands of miles away, two figures were quietly snuggling together. Big Ice Cube, why are you so sure that Old Third will willingly take over your stall? Chu Qingyan tilted her head and asked in confusion. Guess. She thought hard for a while, and suddenly her eyes lit up. Could it be because of Zhijing? Xiao Su pinched her cheeks as a reward, and then smiled faintly. He's a loyal person, and because of this, he has a reason to take over. Sigh, Old Third is also pitiful, to have an older brother like you who's doing everything possible to drag him into the pit. She saved her face from his hands, and then sighed with emotion. Xiao Su sneered. Not necessarily. Pang Zhijing's injuries were so serious, and although she had survived, she would need at least a few years of recuperation before her body could recover. And the things in the national treasury were enough to support several Pang Zijings, so he would only be happy and not complain. Chu Qingyan was, of course, joking. In this world, other than her and her parents, Big Ice Cube only had these two younger brothers that he cared about the most. Perhaps he owed Xiao Ho in the matter of the throne, but he would make up for it in other ways. This was her family's Big Ice Cube. Although he didn't say it, he helped you think of everything. He was really a cold, delicate, and gentle Big Ice Cube. Big Ice Cube, I'm really happy. Facing the little one who suddenly took the initiative to hug him, Xiao Su was a little surprised. He hugged her back, and rested his chin on the top of her head, a faint smile on his lips. What are you happy about? I'm happy that the best husband in the world was picked up by me. I'm really too lucky. She rubbed against his collar and smiled in satisfaction. Xiao Su was a little surprised, but then the corners of his lips rose. How could he not have met the best girl in the world? Big Ice Cube, you really did what you said. Take me away from the imperial court and travel with me. She always thought that this was a thought that could only exist in her heart and not be put into action. These past few years, she had watched him throw himself into the construction of the country, forgetting to eat and sleep. Her heart ached, but she couldn't help him in any way, so how could she use those promises to make him worry? But today, she finally understood that he had worked hard to solve the major matters in the imperial court and stayed up all night to correct the memorials. It was all to help his two younger brothers grow up as quickly as possible and to pave a bright path for Xishuan. In the end, it was all to fulfill his promise to her. With a husband like this, what more could a woman ask for? I'm serious about every word I've said to you. He stroked her hair as he said this lightly. The pain and tiredness of the past few years were nothing compared to him. She nodded heavily. Big Ice Cube was really fulfilling his promise to her. This kind of partner was reliable for life. However, before we take you out to play, we have to solve the problem in front of us first. When Big Ice Cube finished speaking, Chu Qingyan turned to look at the people from Yang Yen sect not far away. She said with a faint smile, "You're right. Then let's treat it as a farewell banquet before we go out to play." Chapter 1546. Standing at the top of the mountain and looking into the distance, it was misty and wet. The mountain was covered in maple trees, and there was only white and red in front of his eyes. He couldn't help but think of that poem. Far away on the cold mountain's stone path, there are houses in the white clouds. Stopping to sit in the maple forest, the maple leaves are redder than the February flowers. Xiao Kong hugged Hualing's leg with one hand and couldn't help but reach out to touch the lingering mist. However, when his finger touched the white mist, it turned into water vapor and wet his finger. He retracted his finger and wiped it on Hualing's pants before calmly saying, "As expected, you can't touch the mist." As for Hualing, he looked at his pants. Not only were there water stains, there was also dirt and some grass. "My little ancestor, it's fine if you're obsessed with cleanliness, but can you stop wiping it on this subordinate's clothes? This isn't your towel." Turan looked at him. Useless. At this time, the Emperor Emeritus and Father Chu were sparring on the mountain peak, not caring about the frightened reactions of the people around them. "This is the first time we've discussed the sword in this kind of place." Interesting, interesting. The Emperor Emeritus waved his branch and smiled contentedly. Father Chu waved his bamboo pole and chuckled, that depends on who we're talking to. Mother Chu stood to the side and prepared a towel for the two of them, smiling as she looked at them. Jean Xian and Xining went out to get some water and fruit. When they returned, Jean Xian handed the wild fruit in his hand to the little master. Elder Zhua and the others who had been trying their best to reduce their presence along the way finally couldn't take it anymore. Elder Zhua walked in front of Jean Xian and sincerely said, "Young sect master, you are the future successor of the Sun Blaze sect and have a noble status. This kind of manual labor isn't something you should be doing." Jean Xian ignored them and continued to feed the little master. Protector Cui said with disappointment, "Young sect master, this is beneath your status. You're no longer Sichuan Empress attendant. Don't be so depraved." Jean Xian was very displeased that they said such things in front of the little master. His brows furrowed, and just as he was about to speak, the little master, who was holding the wild fruit in both hands, raised his head at this time. His gaze was sincere and embarrassed. "Why do you always chatter and bother Jean Xian Su? Do you also want Jean Xian Su to pick the fruit for you to eat? But this baby feels that you guys are old and shouldn't be able to chew them." Moreover, Mother said, "Don't do as you wish." Although Nkong was young and didn't know much about the ways of the world, children didn't have the messy desires of adults. Their senses were very sharp. Ever since these people appeared, he felt that his Jean Xian Crisp was no longer so happy. He often frowned, which made little Nkong very dissatisfied. Their family was very protective of their shortcomings, and little Nkong was no exception. Therefore, today's words had been hovering in his heart for a long time. He just took the opportunity to say it. Although these childish words were dismissed with a laugh, the little child in front of them was no ordinary person. He was the little prince nurtured by the Sichuan emperor. His words carried an invisible deterrence. Although it was very faint, it could still be felt. Moreover, he wasn't speaking empty words because when he spoke, the surrounding air immediately froze. Elder Zhua and the rest knew that although there weren't many people in their group, they didn't know how many people were secretly following them. Moreover, these people's martial arts were very high. Not to mention Xiao Su and the rest, even Turin and Hualing might not be able to defeat them. Therefore, when little Nkong finished speaking, those secret guards who usually didn't show their faces immediately released a murderous aura, causing them to be unable to breathe. A wise man submits to the circumstances. Elder Gui, who didn't speak much, came out to smooth things over. He bent over and tried to squeeze out a kind smile at little Nkong. "Little young master, we don't have any other intentions. We're just worried that young sect master is working too hard." Little Nkong expressed that he didn't feel anything towards this wolf-like smile. He took a bite of the wild fruit and rolled his eyes. "If you're worried about this, you can help Jean Xian Crisp." Mother said it's all talk and no action. The three of them flushed red from little Nkang's words. At this moment, the retired emperor and Father Chu finished their competition and walked over. The retired emperor's sharp eyes saw the thing in his hand and said cheerfully, "My good great-grandson, what are you holding in your hand?" Father Chu immediately glared at him. "Why do you always steal my lines?" The retired emperor shrugged. "You're too slow, are you blaming me?" Just as the two of them were about to roll up their sleeves and fight again, little Nkong placed the wild fruit between the two of them. "Great-grandfather, grandfather, this is the fruit that Jean Xian Crisp picked. It's very sweet. Try it, it's just right for you to grind your teeth. You're really my good grandson." Father Chu kissed little Nkang's cheek and looked at the retired emperor proudly. The retired emperor ignored this childish brat and patted little Nkang's head, praising, "You're really my good great-grandson. Who was the one who said that they couldn't bite these fruits?" Now, he gave these fruits to the retired emperor and Father Chu to eat and even said that it was for them to grind their teeth. This difference in treatment was too obvious. Elder Zhua and the other two were petrified in the wind. Hualing, who had witnessed everything, couldn't help but laugh. He nudged the person beside him and said with a grin, "Have you noticed that the little master is getting smarter and smarter? He could kill people without spilling blood just by moving his mouth." Turin nodded in praise. The little master has always been very smart. It was just that the people around the little master were too smart, so he rarely had the chance to show it. Now that he was faced with these three people, the little master could easily crush them. Jean Xian retracted his gaze from the little master. The warmth in his eyes dissipated and was replaced by mockery. "I've said it before, I only agreed to go back with you. I didn't admit my identity, and I don't think that doing this is degrading my identity. Before you appeared, if Master hadn't saved me and taken me in, I'm afraid that there wouldn't be a Jean Xian in this world. My life was given to me by Master, so..." Jean Xian paused, his gaze cold. "So you don't have the right to interfere with my freedom and criticize my matters. If there's a next time, it's fine if I don't go to North Korea." But, Elder Zhuo still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Elder Gui. The latter shook his head at him, so Elder Zhuo restrained himself and stopped trying to persuade him. Only then did the three people unwillingly leave. Jean Xian didn't pay attention to them anymore. To him, these people who appeared out of nowhere weren't worth wasting any of his energy. He thought that since the little master liked these fruits so much, he would just go and pick some more. He immediately turned around, but when he saw Xining standing behind him, he immediately stopped walking. His gaze revealed confusion and worry. Xining had always been optimistic and cheerful. There was always a smile on her face, but at this time, she pursed her lips and her eyes revealed weakness. Xining. Chapter 1547. Jean Xian frowned slightly, thinking that something had happened to her. "What's wrong with you?" Xining pursed her lips. She immediately retracted her emotions and tried her best to smile. "I'm fine. I think there's not enough water. I'll go get some more." Without waiting for him to respond, Xining immediately turned around, as if there was a wolf dog chasing after her. If she said it was fine, then it was fine. Jin Xin immediately chased after her. At this moment, Shaoan Kong lay on by Yutang's body and pointed in the direction where the two of them had left and asked curiously, "Where are they going? Are they going to pick fruits? Can baby go pick them together?" The Grand Emperor stroked his beard, his eyes clear. "They have something to settle. Let's not disturb them." Shaoan Kong nodded sensibly. When Jean Xian, Su Su, Xining, and Yi returned, he would ask them to bring him to play. The two people who were standing not far away saw all of this. Sima Jun leaned against the tree trunk and raised her eyebrows slightly. She looked at the person beside her. "Aren't you worried?" "Worried about what?" Chu Qingyan stood on the mountain peak against the wind and turned to look at her. She asked despite knowing the answer. "Of course it's your two little lackeys. Didn't you notice that something was wrong between them?" "I didn't notice anything." "Aren't they playing around over there?" "Playing around?" Sima Jun only reacted for a moment. "I realized that we're not on the same channel. Do you know who I'm talking about?" Chu Qingyan blinked and raised her chin at snowflake cake and glutinous rice ball. Sima Jun facepalmed. "I really have to hand it to you." Seeing that she was about to tease her, Chu Qingyan smiled and tilted her head. "Actually, I know what you said, but we're outsiders and it's not good for us to get involved. There are some things that they have to deal with themselves." Sima Jun raised her eyebrows. "You don't seem worried at all." Chu Qingyan chuckled. "What's the use of worrying?" Besides, her gaze landed in the direction where the two of them had left, her eyes sparkling. "I believe that Jean Xian will handle this matter well. Xining is not an unreasonable person. Perhaps they are young now and some things can't be explained clearly, but in the end, everything will be perfect." "You're that confident?" Sima Jun's tone was obviously suspicious. Chu Qingyan said rather confidently, "Of course, I'm the one who brought them out myself, not to say anything else, that is enough." Sima Jun smiled. "But I have another question. Go ahead. I know that you have already left the palace. Why do you still want to take this risk? This was something she could not understand. Chu Qingyan did not answer his question. Instead, she asked, if Shangguang or Tanning were involved in such a situation, what would you do? Sima Jun instantly understood. As expected, my question was superfluous. Chu Qingyan smiled, her gaze becoming serious. Sima, I believe in fate between people. Everyone who appears in life and everything that happens has a reason. 8 years ago, Xining and Jean Xian appeared in my life. I never thought that I would go so far with them. However, with the accumulation of time and the deepening of our relationship, they are no longer my subordinates, but the most important family in my life. No matter what they encounter in the future, as long as I can help them, I will not shirk my duty. I believe that Shangguang and Tanning feel the same way for you. Sima Jun looked at the bright and beautiful woman in front of her. She suddenly remembered that many years ago, when she found out about this person in the Blue Manor, she was curious about her and admired her, but she never thought that they would cross paths. She did not expect that 5 years later, she would meet with her in Jiangnan when she met with misfortune. She had to admit that the fate between people was truly miraculous. Qing Yan, I think that befriending you was the best decision I made 3 years ago in Jiangnan. Aren't I the same? Chu Qingyan looked deeply at the person in front of her. She and Sima had known each other for almost 3 years. She was really touched that Sima had sent so many people to the front lines to support her. We are indeed the right friends. Sima Jun stretched out her hand. After the trip to North Korea, let's travel the world together. Chu Qingyan smiled and held her hand. Okay. Who said that only men had brotherly love? Women also had sisterly love. In the distance, Jean Xian caught up with the person who was scurrying ahead. He reached out and grabbed her wrist, stopping in front of her. Jean Xian's face darkened as he forced her to look into his eyes. Xining, is there something that you can't tell me? What have you been avoiding lately? Xining wanted to avoid his gaze, but under his insistence, she had no choice but to raise her head. She met his confused and slightly angry eyes. Jean Xian, don't ask anymore. I'm fine. Master said before that if a girl says she's fine, then she's fine, Jean Xian said firmly. Xining lowered her eyes and remained silent. When Jean Xian saw this, he held her shoulders with both hands and said seriously, Xining, if there's something on your mind that you want to tell me, even if I can't share your burden, you won't feel uncomfortable holding it in. But I'm afraid that if I tell you, you'll be put in a difficult position. Xining finally relented. If you don't tell me, how do you know that I won't be put in a difficult position? Jean Xian patiently tried to persuade her. Xining's eyes were filled with hesitation and struggle. In the end, under his interrogation, she revealed what was on her mind. Jean Xian, I'm afraid that you won't be able to come back after going to North Korea. I have a feeling that this trip will cause the distance between us to widen. I'm not trying to stop you from looking for your family. On the contrary, I really hope that you can find family members who love you dearly. However, my heart can't help but panic. You're the sect master of a clan, and I'm nothing. What right do I have to stand by your side? In the end, it was because of her lack of confidence that she was worried about her gains and losses. Jean Xian was stunned when he heard this. You still don't know me. How could I abandon you? Xining stared at him in a daze. Jean Xian's eyes were filled with tenderness, and he reached out to pull her into his arms. Silly girl, no matter if I'm Jean Xian or Murong Yunxian, I'm still your future husband and the father of your future child. This is something that no one can change. He would never forget that she was the one who pulled him out of the darkness of solitude and stuffed him with candy and chestnuts. Therefore, no matter what kind of background he had, no matter how many family members he had, he would always be the Jean Xian that she led forward. This time, I'm only going back because I want to put an end to the past. If I can't personally help my mother and master settle their debts, I won't be able to live in peace for the rest of my life. So don't worry. Once I've settled these matters, if you want to raise fish, I'll raise fish with you. If you want to plant flowers, I'll plant flowers with you. No matter what you want to do, I'll accompany you. Jin Xian was usually a man of few words, and he preferred to express his feelings through actions. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to make her feel at ease, he wouldn't have racked his brains to say these things. As for Xining, it was already shocking that he had said so much today, let alone these heartfelt words that were close to a confession. At this moment, she finally dared to cry out loud, pouring out her fear and worries. Jin Xian, don't leave me. Jin Xian hugged her even more tightly. I won't. Even if I die, I'll take you with me. Amen. She nodded heavily. Chapter 1548. When Xining and Jin Xian walked out hand in hand, Sima Jun could not help but look at his good friend in admiration. It's as you expected. Of course, he was someone she had groomed. Chu Qingyan shrugged. Let's go and see how they're doing. Seeing that the two of them had returned, Xiao Kong ran over with his short legs. He stared at Xining's red eyes for a while, then asked, Jin Xian, Su, did you bully Xining Yi? Xining turned his head away in embarrassment, while Jin Xian squatted down and patted his head. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Why would I bully her? Then Yi's eyes. Xiao Kong was puzzled. Xining hurriedly replied, it's because the wind was too strong and got into her eyes. Xiao Kong nodded doubtfully. But mother said that this kind of excuse is usually a lie, but I believe that Xining Yi didn't lie to me. Jin Xian coughed softly, while Xining was crying in his heart. Little master was too mischievous. At this moment, Chu Qingyan and Sima Jun had already walked to the small table that had been temporarily set up on the other side. Xiao Su and Ji Linyang were studying a map. This is... Chu Qingyan looked at the terrain above and felt that it did not look like something she had seen before. She could not help but feel puzzled. The map of North Korea. Ji Linyang raised his chin at the three people standing at the side and smiled ambiguously. They handed it over today. Chu Qingyan looked at Elder Zhua and the other two and frowned slightly. She and Big Ice Cube had accompanied Jin Xian home in the name of accompanying him home, but these people had discussed everything with them, as if they were in charge. It could not help but make people wonder what these people were planning. Call Jin Xian over to take a look. She ordered. Not long after, Jin Xian arrived. Jin Xian also noticed that something was wrong. His gaze calmly swept over the three of them, and then returned to the map. Why did you only take it out now? Master and the others may not have the right to ask this question, but that didn't mean that he didn't. Jin Xian knew the reason why Master called him over, so he bluntly questioned these people. Elder Zhua and the others looked at each other. In the end, Elder Zhua stood up and said that he had forgotten. He was old and his memory was not very good. Chu Qingyan sneered in her heart. This person looked more shrewd than anyone else. This kind of reason could fool a 3-year-old child, but how could it fool them? However, it was clear that they were not worried that they would be suspicious. It was as if they were certain that they would not expose them. How interesting. At this moment, Xiao Su spoke up. According to what you've said, we can reach the border of North Korea by tomorrow? Elder Zhua nodded. That's right. After passing through this mountain, we'll reach the nearest town. His words made everyone involuntarily look at the place surrounded by mountains. Could they really reach it in one day? Instead of crossing one mountain after another to block the way? That'd better be the case. Xiao Su's voice was calm, but it imperceptibly gave off a kind of pressure. The three of them immediately responded respectfully. After the three of them left, Sima Jun leaned over and lightly tapped the yellowed map with his finger. He asked, really? It doesn't look fake. Ji Linyang pointed at the edge of the map. Don't you feel that this place is very familiar? Sima Jun looked at it seriously. It's very familiar. It seems to be the place we've been to before. Ji Linyang nodded and asked, do you still remember how we got to that place? Sima Jun raised his eyebrows. I think we fell into a valley and accidentally barged in. But I'm very curious. Why did it feel like we were in a dream? Then we forgot the specific route. Chu Qingyan listened to their conversation and frowned slightly. Big Ice Cube, why do I feel that North Korea is very mysterious? Xiao Su clasped his hands behind his back and said indifferently, North Korea. I've never heard of it before. For a country to exist so mysteriously, it must be very powerful. Jean Xian, who had been quietly listening to their conversation, suddenly spoke up. Master, why don't you and everyone else not go to North Korea with me? You can all go back. Chu Qingyan was about to speak when Sima Jun spoke first. Little Jean Xian, we're already here. You're asking us to go back. Are you joking? Jean Xian said awkwardly, but it seems that this trip will be very dangerous. I don't want everyone to take the risk for me. Ji Linyang smiled and said, Little Jean Xian, do you think your master hasn't considered these problems? Don't think too much. The most important thing is to prepare for the next enemy. Hearing this, Jean Xian looked at his master. Seeing his master nod at him with a reassuring smile, he swallowed the rest of his words. Half an hour later, they set off. Everyone continued to rest where they were. Chu Qingyan gently patted her son, who was sleeping on by Yutang's body. Her gaze was as gentle as water. At this moment, she heard Big Ice Cube's voice. I've already asked Water Spirit to bring some people over. Hearing this, she couldn't help but turn her head. You want her to come over and help? Xiao Su nodded. If you want to know the strength of a country, you just need to look at the layout of their cities and roads. I've studied their maps. From this, I suspect that this country isn't as peaceful as they say. At the very least, they have two opposing factions. Otherwise, their cities wouldn't all be defensive types. For us, the most disadvantageous thing right now is that we don't know the other side well. Also, the words of those people surnamed Shua can't be trusted. So we can't be too passive. Chu Qingyan nodded in agreement. Then, does third brother still need help? Xiao Su smiled. Instead of worrying about him, you should worry about second brother. What does he have to worry about? She was completely confused. Because he had left the capital without permission and left Xiao Ho alone, Xiao Yao had been extremely obedient along the way. He was worried that his imperial brother would find trouble with him, so he kept his tail between his legs. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Marriage is an important matter. Xiao Su smiled ambiguously. Before leaving the palace, second brother's lady mother had asked him to help with this matter. Chu Qingyan suddenly realized that Xiao Yao was already at the age of marrying a wife. It was just that he always did some indecent things, making people forget that he also needed to get married and have children. His lady mother's intention is that as long as it's a woman, it's fine. We'll do as we see fit. Xiao Su said, rather amused. Aha! His lady mother must be so worried about his marriage. Chu Qingyan snickered, then winked mischievously. What kind of girl do you think is suitable for him? Xiao Su saw through her thoughts and played along. What do you think? Of course it's someone who can subdue him. With second brother's personality, if he wasn't a little more formidable, a good match would probably turn into a resentful one. Alright, as long as you know what to do, I'll leave this matter to you. Chu Qingyan rubbed her hands and laughed mischievously. The eldest sister-in-law is like a mother. I'll definitely help him find a good wife that he'll be satisfied with. At the same time, Xiao Yao raised his head and happened to meet imperial sister-in-law's fervent gaze, as if she was weighing how much he could be sold for. He immediately shrunk his neck. No way. He had been so well behaved recently. He hadn't done anything bad. How scary. He had to stay away from sister-in-law. Chapter 1549. After the group crossed the mountain, they arrived at an even taller mountain. Everyone stopped in their tracks, confused. Turan brought Elder Joie and the others to the front. Jean Xan walked up to them. Didn't you say that we could reach the border here? Where's the road? Chu Qingyan and the others looked at them calmly. Although they were here to help Jean Xian, they were not in a position to stand up for him. Moreover, this time, she wanted to train Jean Xian's ability. Elder Joie immediately said, "Young sect master, don't be impatient. The road is here." As he spoke, he nodded to Protector Cui and Elder Gui. The two of them walked past the crowd and walked to the front of the mountain. They reached out their hands and groped around. It was unknown what kind of strange technique they used, but after pushing the mountain rock a few times, the two of them quickly retreated. Soon, a heavy sound was heard. The mountain soil brushed down, the earth shook, and the mountain shook. Even the leaves rustled. Xiao Su hugged his son and wife and took a few steps back. Those who could not dodge in time were covered in dirt. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes at the three people. His murderous aura was obvious. Elder Joie felt the strong hostility and immediately begged for mercy. "I'm really sorry. We haven't opened this mountain gate for many years. We didn't expect the mountain rock and dust to be so heavy. We forgot to remind you." Sorry. This excuse was barely acceptable. Chu Qingyan pulled Big Ice Block's sleeve, and he withdrew his aura. At this time, the dust settled and the dust dispersed. Sure enough, a cave big enough for two people to pass through was revealed. From the outside, it was pitch black, and one could not even see their own fingers. This way of entering undoubtedly added a thick layer of mystery to North Korea. Xiao Su and Ji Linyang looked at each other and reached a tacit agreement. In the end, Guardian Cui and Elder Gui walked in front to lead the way, while Elder Joie was left in the middle. It was said that this was for better communication. Ji Linyang walked beside Xiao Su and whispered, "This mechanism is the most difficult one in the Chiman escape technique. The mountain gate is made of thousands of kilograms of stone. Unless you know the specific way to open it, you won't be able to crack it from the outside." "What if it's you?" Xiao Su asked. Ji Linyang smiled. "Piece of cake." Xiao Su smiled faintly. "Very good." After everyone entered the cave, the mountain gate closed automatically. Elder Joie was just about to remind everyone that there were torches on the mountain wall, but before he could open his mouth, the entire cave lit up. The fierce cavalry beside him had already raised their own torches and moved forward very quickly. They were well trained and walked very cautiously, knocking on the mountain wall from time to time. He also realized that there were so many people following him that they could form a small army. He was slightly surprised, but he quickly calmed down. Actually, on the way here, he knew that there were far more people than they appeared on the surface. Now that he saw these people, he confirmed his guess. On the way here, he also witnessed the world-famous fierce cavalry's ability to move, so he calmed down. This group of people was far more powerful than the elite soldiers trained in North Korea. Even if Turan and the others were flying in the sky, he would not be surprised. This group of people was a terrifying existence. However, it was also because he valued these people's abilities that he did everything possible to bring them in. Chu Qingyan looked at the tunnel and felt a sense of déjà vu. Jean Xian, doesn't this look like the place where we were imprisoned before? At that time, she was accidentally captured by that group of arrogant Taoist priests and was imprisoned on a similar mountain path. That was also the first time she and Jean Xian met. Jean Xian nodded. "It seems like this place is easy to hide our tracks." "Mother, where are we going?" Little An Kang, who had been playing along the way, finally remembered to ask this question. Chu Qingyan tilted her head and smiled at little An Kang, who was in Big Ice Cube's arms. "We're going to Jean Xian's house as guests." Little An Kang instantly became excited, feeling that this dark tunnel was not so boring anymore. Father Chu and the retired emperor started to argue with each other again. "It seems that we haven't fought in the tunnel yet. Do you want to try?" "Interesting. Who's afraid of who? Come on." Thus, the sound of fists breaking through the air could be heard from behind. Everyone was already used to it and continued to walk forward calmly. In any case, these two old men would exchange blows everywhere they went. This tunnel was very long, and it was a staircase. After walking for more than an hour, they seemed to have walked through the tunnel. Just when everyone thought that this country was living underground, a white light finally appeared in front of them. Everyone was relieved. However, when they walked out, what appeared in front of them was a pool of water. It was neither big nor small, only about 3 feet long. "Where's the road? I say, you guys aren't playing with us, right?" Xiao Yao waved his fan and walked forward to look at the small pool. He was a little disdainful, this was not even enough for him to grow a few lotus flowers. Elder Zhuo smiled and said, "No rush, the road will come soon." As he spoke, he glanced at Protector Chui. Protector Chui followed the order and walked to a stalk of grass growing beside the pool. He squatted down and reached out to pull the grass up. Just when everyone thought that the grass was going to be uprooted, a miracle happened. The water in the pool suddenly receded, and slowly, the entire pool was empty. Protector Chui jumped into the pool and touched the ground. Then, he used his strength to lift it up, revealing a hole that was as wide as a person. Everyone felt as if they were watching something magical. They could not help but mutter in their hearts. Just how mysterious was North Korea that they had to go through so much trouble just to enter. "Everyone, please." Protector Chui immediately went down after lifting the hole. Elder Zhuo extended his hand and invited everyone. Bai Yutong and the others seemed to have found something fun and jumped in first. Turan and the others followed closely behind. Then, Chu Qingyan and the others followed, leaving Huoling and the others to bring up the rear. After everyone went in and the lid was closed again, the dried-up pool miraculously surged with water again. Gradually, it returned to its previous state, as if nothing had happened. The hole under the pool was not the final path. They walked for nearly half a day until they reached a place similar to the water curtain cave. Only then were they told that they had reached the end. "After passing through this water curtain, we will arrive at the town closest to our border. Everyone, please be patient. We will arrive soon," Elder Zhuo said with an apologetic tone. However, these words did not make Chu Qingyan and the others feel relaxed. On the contrary, their gazes became more serious. However, they had already come this far. There was no turning back. However, no one knew what was waiting for them outside. At the same time, a pair of shoes stepped on the mountain gate that Chu Qingyan and the others had stopped at. It was a pair of men's boots. "Strange, strange. We followed them here, but they disappeared into thin air." A voice muttered to himself. Then, a pair of shoes appeared. It was a girl's shoes, embroidered with beautiful hibiscus flowers. "It is indeed strange," the woman said as she touched her chin. "Why did you follow us again?" the man from before said with a headache. "The road leads to the sky. Why do you care which way I go?" the woman retorted. The man rolled his eyes. She really followed him wherever he went. Chapter 1550. What's with that expression of yours? The young girl put her hands on her hips, faintly angry. She was out of breath from chasing after him and her fair cheeks were stained with a blush. Her light purple clothes were blown up by the mountain breeze and fluttered in the wind. Inadvertently, she was flirtatious. Higashio Motetsu's eyes flickered slightly as he leaned sideways against the mountain wall and casually said, "Didn't you say that the road is open and no one can control where you go? Then why do you care what expression I have?" That's right, the girl who had been relentlessly chasing after him for the past 2 years was undoubtedly Tao Tao. After saving his life, the benefactor who had shamelessly followed him around. He had a huge headache. She didn't want the money he gave her or the things he gave her and only liked to follow him around blindly. Tao Tao also copied him and rolled her eyes. "Hey, what's with that attitude of yours?" Higashio Motetsu's eyes twitched as he couldn't help but open his mouth. Tao Tao proudly crossed her arms and looked at him. Didn't I say that the road is open and no one can control where I go? So what attitude I have, it's none of your business. She returned the same words back to him. Higashio Motetsu's mouth twitched again. Okay. Whatever you say, you're right. Now, I dare to ask Miss Tao where you're going next so that I won't be an eyesore to you. Once he said that, Tao Tao's expression changed slightly and the smile on her face disappeared. He was obviously chasing her away. Even if she could be thick-skinned, she was still a girl after all. No matter how thick-skinned she was, she couldn't be that thick-skinned. She laughed dryly and after hiding her awkwardness, she stubbornly said, I'll go wherever I want to go. It's none of your business. Knowing that it was useless to say anything more to her, he didn't bother with her and closed his eyes to rest. Seeing that he no longer paid attention to her, Tao Tao was a little unhappy, but she knew that he had been on the road for the past 2 days and must be very tired, so she did not disturb him. She found a place to rest, yawned, and prepared to catch up on sleep. Higashio Motetsu was surprised by her quietness and couldn't help but open his eyes. He tilted his head to look for her and saw that she had fallen asleep while leaning against a tree. He raised his eyebrows slightly. This girl seemed to be alive and kicking and seemed to have endless energy, but there were also times when she was tired. It could be seen that these 2 days of traveling had consumed all of her mental strength. He shook his head and took off his coat. He gently walked over and draped it over her body. Then, he went back to sit down and rest. After the footsteps faded away, the corners of Tao Tao's mouth lifted. She knew that he wouldn't leave her alone. All these years, in order to catch up to him, she didn't dare to sleep deeply. She was afraid that he would disappear when she woke up, so she woke up when he approached her. But now, she could sleep peacefully. After waking up from her sleep, Tao Tao saw him fumbling around the mountain. She couldn't help walking over. What are you doing? The people disappeared here, so I suspect that there is a mechanism here, but I haven't found it yet. Higashio Motetsu knew that she wouldn't give up so easily, so he didn't argue with her and just told her the truth. Tao Tao nodded. This explanation was very reasonable. But after he finished speaking, he retreated. He didn't plan on looking anymore, so he became even more curious. Why aren't you looking anymore? If you don't have the ability, then you shouldn't take on this porcelain task. I never do useless work. Since you don't know how, then don't waste your energy. Higashio Motetsu moved back and walked to the side. Tao Tao hugged his clothes and followed him. Her head was filled with confusion. You have some self-awareness. But aren't you looking for Qing Yan and the others? You're giving up just like that. This isn't something you would do. Higashio Motetsu chuckled when he heard that. Not everything in this world needs to be done personally. Sometimes, you have to rely on your brain. He pointed at the person in his head and then teased, unfortunately, you don't. TSK, 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 Tao Tao snorted. Mocking people whenever he didn't agree with her. Sure enough, this was his usual style. Then may I ask, how are you going to rely on your brain? She didn't believe that he didn't do anything and the mechanism would open by itself. Obviously, this person didn't believe him. If it was any other time, he wouldn't be bothered. But today, he was in the mood for leisure. In other words, having a silly girl to tease was a good way to pass the time. Because someone will help us find the way. How do you know? I know Xiao Su. He's a very reliable person. Others take 3 steps at a time, but he can see through it at a glance. He doesn't need to walk to know what's 10 steps away from him. He won't let himself and Qing Yan and the others fall into a passive situation. That's why he dared to bring those people to explore alone. This proves that he has a backup plan. I didn't expect you to have such a high opinion of your love rival. I didn't know that you were such a practical person. Tao Tao was very surprised. Higashio Motetsu rolled his eyes at her. Am I that kind of narrow-minded person? Besides, I'll only be convinced if I lose to someone like him. If the person that Qing Yan likes is worse than me, wouldn't I lose face? Tao Tao laughed lightly. Good, good, good. You're all right. In any case, I already know that your love rival is several times stronger than you. So just give up on that thought and follow this lady. Her joking words carried a bit of truth. Only she knew that in these past few years, she didn't dare to seriously confess to him. She was afraid that if she really did that, there really would be no way out for them. So she only dared to test him in jest. As expected, he thought that she was joking again and smiled wickedly. Forget it. This kind of provocation won't work on this young master. She knew it would be like this. After sighing in her heart, she quickly cheered herself up. All right. She shrugged and continued to ask, then what do you plan to do next? Aren't you going to find Qing Yan? Some time ago, the Moon Palace sect had a dispute with another sect. It had been quite big. When he received the news, he went out to deal with it. When he came back, he found that Qing Yan had disappeared. Not only had she disappeared, everyone related to her had also left. She didn't forget the lonely expression on his face at that time. It was as if there was nothing left for him to remember. No matter how she tried to tease him, it was useless. Until he received the letter that Qing Yan had sent someone to leave for him. Only then did he return to being the arrogant and insufferably arrogant Higashio Motetsu. At that time, she felt a deep pain in her heart. But she didn't dare to think too deeply about it. She was afraid that if she did, she would no longer have the motivation to persevere. Sometimes, when it was time to be smart, she was smart. When it was time to pretend to be stupid, she pretended to be stupid. Higashio Motetsu casually picked a blade of grass and put it in his mouth. One word, wait. Wait? She blinked in confusion. Wait for what? Higashio Motetsu gave her a look of disdain. Of course it's to wait for someone. You're so stupid, how did you live until now? Tao Tao's breath caught in her throat. She really couldn't argue with this scoundrel, otherwise her beauty would die early. Forget it, if he said to wait, then she would wait. In any case, as long as he didn't secretly run away, everything would be fine. Seeing that Tao Tao wasn't scared away by him and was instead leisurely sitting on the ground, Higashio Motetsu rubbed his forehead. She really was a stubborn little girl. After he sighed, his eyes unconsciously curved. It was a pity that no one noticed, not even him. Chapter 1551. It was just as Elder Joie and the rest had said. After passing through the water curtain and walking for a while, they arrived at the exit. White light illuminated the entrance of the cave. Everyone, who had not seen the sun for a long time, only felt a flash in front of their eyes. They suddenly saw the blue sky and white clouds. They had the illusion that there was a village at the end of the tunnel. However, this exit was a little unexpected. It was actually located halfway up the mountain. From afar, there was a large paddy field. Houses, cattle, and sheep could be seen everywhere. The land was flat, and the houses were upright. There were fertile fields, beautiful ponds, mulberry trees, and bamboo trees. The roads were crisscrossed, and chickens and dogs could be heard. However, if there was no unforeseen event, Chu Qingyan would have thought that she had walked into a paradise. Turan and the rest had just extinguished their torches and walked out when more than 10 shining swords appeared from the side of the cave. Every move was a killing move, and they were merciless. Xiao Lai Qi and the rest drew their weapons in a well-trained manner. Some of them protected their masters, while the rest went up and fought with the other party. The unforeseen event happened too quickly, and many people did not have time to react. Glutinous rice ball carried little Ankang on its back, and the other two took on the responsibility of guarding. They bared their teeth and guarded against the killers, occasionally helping Xiao Lai Qi to eat. Chu Qingyan stood beside her big ice cube. After confirming that little Ankang was safe, she retracted her gaze from her son and narrowed her eyes to look at these uninvited guests. These people were wearing white and blue shirts, dark blue trousers, and blue hats made of cloth on their heads. They had a very exotic style. They did not wear masks, as if they were not worried about being recognized. Their muscles were thick, and the long swords in their hands were powerful. Although their martial arts moves were simple, each move carried the power of thunder, and they could not be underestimated. What is going on? Xiao Su coldly glanced at Elder Zhua and the rest, as if as long as they hid something, he would not let them off so easily. Elder Gui cried out, "Young Master Chu, we don't know either. We haven't been back for many years." These words did not seem to be false. At that moment, one of the assassins shouted, "Zhua Haotian, I thought you were capable after coming back, but I didn't expect you to bring an outsider in. How dare you bring an outsider into the grudge between our two clans? Today, you will die without a burial ground." As soon as he finished speaking, the killers seemed to have gone mad. They started attacking everyone. This kind of suicidal method was not only because of personal grudges, but also because of the honor of protecting the country. Therefore, once the people were united and resisted together, their strength was astonishing. As soon as he finished speaking, assassins dressed in the same way kept appearing on the mountainside. Some of them were holding axes, long sabers, shovels, and all sorts of weapons. However, their attacks were very ruthless. Receiving the cold glances from Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su, Zhua Haotian replied loudly and guiltily, "Looks like you're all from the Tranquil Moon sect. For so many years, you've been chasing after our young sect master. Now that we're back with our young sect master's people, these are all his friends. How can they be considered outsiders? Instead, it's you who are the guilty ones complaining first. Do you still have any reason?" The leader, a black-bearded man, laughed and sneered, "Zhua Haotian, you old fart, your ability to twist words and force logic is really increasing day by day. Since your young sect master is back, it's good that we eliminate him. Let's see if your Sun clan will still submit to our Moon clan without a leader in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone rushed forward. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes. "Take them down." Initially, the fierce cavalry had held back their strength in order to probe the other party's abilities. Now that they had received the order, they went all out. The situation quickly became intense, and the situation became one-sided. "Who are you people?" That black-bearded man saw that he had injured many of his brothers, and his attitude changed from arrogance to fear. Only then did he look at Xiao Su's group. Xiao Su looked at him coldly and did not reply. This kind of person had no right to speak to him. Black-bearded man had never been ignored like this before, and his embarrassment turned into anger. He raised his sword and slashed towards Xiao Su's direction. Xiao Su waved his sleeve, and it was as if black-bearded man had crashed into a wall. His entire body flew out without any warning. The force of the collision was the same as the force of the collision. He heavily smashed into the mountain wall and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, what shocked him more than his injury was Xiao Su's martial arts. Perhaps even their sect master was not his opponent. Chu Qingyan chuckled. Black-bearded man really overestimated himself. The big ice cube usually did not casually make a move. Otherwise, who knew how many people's hearts would have been shattered? As soon as black-bearded man fell, the people he had brought with him panicked and immediately helped him up. Xiao Su's move had caused the momentum of the crowd to dissipate. To Chu Qingyan and the rest, victory was already in their hands. But just as black-bearded man and the rest were about to be surrounded by the Shaolai cavalry, a series of shouts suddenly came from not far away. Chu Qingyan frowned. Could it be that there was another wave of attacks? Just as that thought flashed through her mind, a rain of arrows fell from the sky, causing her heart to tremble. She protected her mother, Xining, and the rest as they retreated. Glutinous rice ball and the rest reacted even faster. They had already carried Xiao and Kong back into the cave to hide. At the same time, a group of people dressed in red and white similar to black-bearded man's clothes rushed over while shouting to kill. Protector Chui's eyes lit up. "Elder Zhua, our people have arrived." When Elder Zhua and Elder Gui saw it clearly, they immediately became excited. Black-bearded man and his men had already revealed their weakness and were preparing to retreat. Now that they saw their reinforcements, they made a prompt decision and quickly fled under the cover of the rain of arrows. Don't chase, Xiao Su ordered coldly. It was their first time here and they were not familiar with the terrain. It would not be difficult for Black-Bearded Man to escape, so they did not need to waste their energy chasing after him. Those so-called allies that Protector Chui had mentioned instantly surrounded them. Elder Zhua, you guys are finally willing to come back. The outside world must be very exciting. I think you guys are so happy that you forgot your home. Back then, when I asked you to follow us, you guys were unwilling. Now, if we did not save you, I'm afraid you guys would have already died in the hands of the Yu clan. You guys really overestimate yourselves. A burly man with thick eyebrows walked out from the crowd. His clothes were even more noble, and it could be seen that he was the leader of this group. However, his words were filled with obvious hostility and contempt. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su looked at each other. Could it be that the wolves had just left, and now the tigers and lions had come? At this moment, a leisurely voice interrupted them. Yo, where did you guys come from? How arrogant! Can't you see that we're dealing with those people? If it weren't for your appearance, those people would have been taken down long ago. I haven't even loosened my muscles yet, and you guys are already stirring up trouble. As soon as Xiao Yao finished speaking, the people behind the burly man with thick eyebrows immediately lit up their bows and arrows. The sharp tips of the arrows pointed straight at Chu Qingyan's group. Chapter 1552. Pointing his sharp arrow at Chu Qingyan's group, the thick-browed man looked at Xiao Yao provocatively. Kid, you're still young and inexperienced. Don't overestimate your abilities. Seeing that his little fan was being bullied, Father Chu rolled up his sleeves to teach them a lesson, but he was stopped by the retired emperor. This kind of small fry isn't worth fighting. Let's wait and see. The retired emperor was the best at playing tricks back then, so Father Chu rolled up his sleeves without much thought. At this time, Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su didn't step forward. Instead, they looked at each other quietly, then looked at Elder Zhua's group and said in a low voice that only they could hear, if you can't solve this matter, then there's nothing to talk about. Xiao Su's words made Elder Zhua and the others tremble. They originally thought that with Xiao Su's strength, they would definitely be able to take down the thick-browed man and the others. They didn't expect that Xiao Su's group was so smart that they seemed to see through their plan of sitting on top of the mountain and watching the tigers fight, and directly pushed them out. This was called going for wool and coming home shorn. Sure enough, people from the imperial family couldn't be underestimated. Elder Zhua immediately smiled at Xiao Su's group, then turned to the thick-browed man and said, Lu Zhang, don't go too far. Do you know who we brought back this time? Lu Zhang smiled disdainfully. Who cares who you brought back? Outsiders who trespass into the territory will be killed without mercy. You're doing this knowingly. Even if I kill you here, no one will say anything. Protector Chui stepped forward and snorted. Lu Zhang, look at who we brought back first before you make a fuss. Lu Zhang originally planned to shoot them dead right here, but hearing their confident tone, he couldn't help but be a little skeptical. Who did you bring back? Elder Zhuo walked to Jin Xian's side and bowed respectfully, then turned to Lu Zhang and said, We've searched for so many years and finally found the young sect master. Young sect master? Lu Chang was stunned. From the beginning until now, he had not looked at these people directly. His gaze immediately swept over to Jin Xian. The handsome and tall youth's facial features were indeed 80% similar to the late sovereign's. Only then did his suspicions lessen a bit. That's right, Lu Chang. Why aren't you ordering your men to put away their bows? Could it be that you want to go against your superiors? As if he had gained confidence, Elder Zhua straightened his back and criticized. Zhua Haotian, do you think I'll believe your one-sided story? Everything will have to wait until we go back and verify it with the high priest. Although Lu Chang's mouth was still unyielding, he had already ordered his men to put away the bows and arrows as he spoke. It could be seen that he still had reservations about this matter. Elder Zhua immediately looked at Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan to ask for credit, but they ignored him. Since we dared to come back, what is there to be afraid of? Bring us to see the high priest. Elder Gui smiled coldly. Lu Chang wanted to say something, but when he saw Jin Xian, he swallowed his words. Forget it, a wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Thus, with a wave of his hand, he ordered his men to open up a path and led the way out. Jin Xian glanced at his master, his eyes filled with inquiry. After his master nodded, he followed him. Glutinous Rice Ball and the other two who had been hiding in the cave saw that the crisis was over and strutted out with their little master on their backs. The Ri clan people did not see the three of them before, and now that they appeared, they were almost scared away. Boss Lu, you see, Lu Chang was a little dissatisfied when he saw their cowardice, but when he turned around and saw the three huge snow wolves, he almost dropped the weapon in his hand. However, when he saw the little boy sitting on top of them, as well as Elder Zhua and the others' expressions, it was obvious that they were traveling with them. He suppressed the fear in his heart, otherwise, he would be looked down upon later. Elder Zhua looked at the fierce three and little Nkong, and his heart was filled with endless emotions. Finally, someone was scared. So they were not alone. Father Chu looked at Lu Chang and the others with disdain. Cowards! By Yutang and the other two, we are fierce and cruel. Which eye of yours saw that? Brothers and sisters, let's go. Soon, the group of people went down the mountain and walked into the fields and countryside. Chu Qingyan had been paying attention to the surrounding environment and realized that the villagers, who were dressed no differently from Xishuan, were very respectful towards Lu Chang and the others. She had to admit that religious beliefs had an influence on these people. Actually, this is the method that the people above use to control the people below. They subtly influence the lives of the people. This kind of belief exists in every country, but some are not obvious. Xiao Su saw what she was thinking and explained. Chu Qingyan sighed, it's just that this kind of belief is completely used to control the people here. It's simply too scary. Xiao Su did not comment. At this time, Lu Chang led the group to the entrance of a village, where two carriages were parked. Lu Chang had just held his breath, and now he could finally let it out. He pointed at the carriage and smiled contemptuously at Chu Qingyan and the others. There are only two carriages, one is for you, the rest is up to you. Sima Jun looked at the carriage tracks on the ground, and could tell that there were more than two carriages parked there. This was obviously making things difficult for them. It was a pity that Lu Chang did not look at who was in front of him. Xiao Su gave Mu Ling a look, and Mu Ling understood. With a wave of his hand, more than 10 subordinates appeared out of thin air. Get to work. With that, he disappeared. Lu Chang did not understand what they were going to do. He was about to question Elder Zhua and the others, but Mu Ling quickly gave him the answer. Because the ground trembled slightly, and very quickly, Xiao Lai's cavalry returned with more than 10 thick trees. Mu Ling glanced at the two carriages in disdain. How dare they let their masters ride on such trash? He would let them see what a real carriage was. In the blink of an eye, the trees were cut into wooden planks of different lengths, and 2 or 3 people assembled them together. Not long after, the shape of the carriage appeared. Not only was it large, but it was also very sturdy, and looked very comfortable. Not only Lu Chang, but even Elder Zhua and the others were stunned. But what shocked them even more was yet to come. Turan, who had left at some point, returned with more than 10 horses. Where did you get these horses? Lu Chang could not help but ask. Turan said indifferently, we passed by the village just now. You stole them? Lu Chang's gaze suddenly became unfriendly. Turan sneered, I used something to exchange for them. What kind of people were Xiao Lai's cavalry? They had extremely strong detection abilities. When they first arrived at an unfamiliar place, the first thing they did was to observe the terrain and pay attention to their surroundings. As long as they wanted to, there was nothing they could not do. Lu Chang smiled embarrassedly. At this time, the horses were already tied up, and the 6 or 7 carriages were assembled. Xining and the others spread the blankets inside, and the spacious and comfortable carriages made their grand appearance. Father Chu raised his chin and said to the stunned Lu Chang, "We don't need your carriages." With that, Father Chu helped Mother Chu into the carriage, and did not even look at Lu Chang and the others, looking very disdainful. Chu Qingyan looked at Mu Ling, Turan, and the others with admiration. What a slap in the face. Chapter 1553. Although this was a border town, it wasn't far from the stronghold that Lu Zhang had mentioned. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su exchanged a glance, and both of them had an idea of what was going on. Because they were dubious of Jin Xian's identity, and the skills that Mu Ling and the others had displayed were simply too admirable and terrifying, Lu Zhang was more cautious in front of everyone. Although he always acted high and mighty, he didn't take the initiative to look for trouble. This way, Chu Qingyan felt more at ease and treated these people as if they didn't exist. Wow, what kind of tree is this? Its fruit is half red and half green. Father Chu leaned against the car window, his eyes flashing with a strange light. It's probably half ripe. The Emperor Emeritus rubbed his chin in response. Lu Zhang and the others twitched their mouths and endured. What kind of animal is that? It doesn't have any hair on its head. Father Chu turned into a questioning baby again. The Emperor Emeritus glanced at it. It's probably too old and bald. Lu Zhang, Elder Zhua, and the others twitched their mouths and continued to endure. What kind of flower is that? Why are all the leaves falling off? Chu Qian's father asked again. Before the Emperor Emeritus could speak, Lu Zhang couldn't take it anymore. He was afraid that this person would come up with some random answer. That wasn't half ripe just now. It's our red passion fruit, a kind of medicinal fruit. The red part can be used to ward off snakes and insects, and the green part can be used to detoxify poisons. That barefooted beast has never had any hair on its head since it was young. The one just now wasn't even a year old. How is it too old to be bald? It's not at all. And the flower didn't lose all its leaves. It doesn't have any leaves to begin with. You don't know anything, so don't judge it so casually. Lu Zhang felt like smoke was coming out of his head. He was about to explode from anger. Elder Zhua and the others silently nodded in their hearts. However, Xiao Su and the others were very powerful. It was obvious that they were very protective of their father-in-law and grandfather. Therefore, they didn't dare to speak up and tell the two of them, for fear of being beaten up. They all had the same thought, so angry, but still have to maintain a smile. Now that Lu Chang had spoken, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, after hearing the lion's roar, Father Chu dug his ears and nodded. Then, he turned to the retired emperor and said, "These things are so weird. They don't have any fur or leaves, and the fruits are so ugly." The retired emperor nodded in agreement. Lu Chang, so what's with that tree over there? Why does little you look so much like a caterpillar? Mr. Chu asked again. The retired emperor frowned and looked at it carefully for a while. Then, he gave an answer. Perhaps this tree is sick and has a moth. Lu Chang, it was clearly a perfectly fine tree, all right? It's just that the leaves look like worms. Was there anything wrong with that? What did they take the audience with the high priest for? Sightseeing? However, as if they didn't notice that some people were about to explode in anger, Father Chu and the Emperor Emeritus continued to talk as if there was no one else present. Chu Qingyan stifled her laughter. Is it really okay for father and imperial grandfather to act like this? What if these people fly into a rage out of humiliation? Xiao Su's voice drifted into his ears. I don't think they would dare. Turan, Huoling, and the others walked on either side. Just them alone was enough to deter others, not to mention by Yutang's group of 3 who were each lying on a carriage, occasionally flashing their claws. No one dared to move against the 2 old men. Chu Qingyan thought about it and agreed. Who told these people to act like they were so noble and they were ants? She felt that there was no need to bicker with these frogs at the bottom of the well. However, If father and imperial grandfather wanted to have some fun, she would let them do as they pleased. Thus, in these 3 days, Lu Chang and the others suffered the ravages of Father Chu and the Emperor Emeritus' voice. They dared to be angry, but they didn't dare say anything. This was because as long as they showed the slightest bit of dissatisfaction, those 3 snow wolves would first reveal a sinister green light towards them. For safety's sake, they should continue to pretend to be deaf and mute. Very quickly, the group arrived at the town where the stronghold was located. Lu Chang took Elder Zhua and the other 2 to see the high priest first and settled Xiao Su and the others in a courtyard. He even left some people behind to protect them, but in fact, it was more like they were there to keep an eye on them. Xiao Su, Chu Qingyan, Jin Xian, Xiao Yao, Sima Jun, Ji Linyang, and the others gathered in the room. I say, Jin Xian, what kind of clan are you from? Why do you act like you're 15,000 and act like you're the most powerful? Xiao Yao finally had a chance to vent the words he had been holding back the entire time. Jin Xian sighed when he heard this. Because they grew up in North Korea and haven't seen the world. They always think that the outside world isn't as good as here, nor is it as prosperous and powerful as here. Moreover, they're very xenophobic, so it's hard to avoid their arrogant attitude. To put it bluntly, they're frogs at the bottom of a well. Sima Jun shook her head. From what she had seen and heard along the way, she realized that this country was many years behind Sichuan. Although it was rich in exotic flowers and herbs, and some things were quite novel that couldn't be seen outside, whether it was in terms of productivity or weapons, it was far behind the outside world. Chu Qingyan nodded. Sima Jun was right. Their bows and arrows were the most ancient style, and the tips of the arrows weren't sharp at all. They could hurt people, but it was still a little difficult to kill with one arrow. That may be the case, but don't underestimate it. For a country to be able to survive for hundreds of years without falling, there must be something extraordinary about it. Perhaps there are many things that aren't what we see on the surface. Xiao Su tapped the table lightly with a solemn expression. Ji Linyang agreed. That's right. I think the same as Brother Xiao. The fact that they can keep this place a secret for so long without outsiders knowing is enough to prove that they're not as simple as they seem. The 2's words caused everyone to ponder deeply. Then tell me, are these people sincerely looking for Jin Xian to be the young sect master? Xiao Yao was the first to ask a question. I don't think so. Jin Xian took over the question himself and frowned. They're hiding everything from me. When I asked them about the current situation of the Sun Flame sect, they always gave me the runaround, saying that I'll know when I come back. So I think there's something fishy about this. These people give me the feeling that they're hiding a bellyful of evil. Perhaps they're already preparing to attack us. Chu Qingyan rubbed her chin and narrowed her eyes coldly. Why do you think so? Xiao Yao was slightly surprised. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows slightly, and the corners of his mouth curved into a mocking smile. They left us here alone, so it's obvious that they're going to meet that high priestess and prepare a secret plan. As expected, they'll make their move tonight. Sima Jun asked in surprise, really? Ji Linyang took his wife's hand and smiled knowingly. Looks like we shouldn't sleep too deeply tonight. I believe the mystery will be revealed soon. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan exchanged glances and saw a storm of blood in each other's eyes. Everyone dispersed. The moon was high in the sky, the time for demons and monsters to appear. Chapter 1554. Late at night was the time for dreams, but it was also the time for thieves to appear. Elder Zhua, Lu Chang, and the others who were supposed to be searching for people suddenly appeared at the entrance of the house. The Sun Blaze sect people guarding the house quickly approached them, not bothering to conceal their voices, as if they were not worried about being heard by the people inside. Reporting to Boss Lu, they have already been drugged by our bewitching medicine. They won't wake up until tomorrow, said one of the thugs. Lu Chang and Elder Zhua looked at each other, and could not help but reveal a satisfied expression. Lu Chang waved his hand, take them away, leave no one behind. Yes. Not long after, Chu Qingyan and the others were taken to the carriage and sent to the secret stronghold. Elder Zhuo, aren't these people quite capable? Why are they so easily tricked? Protector Chui looked at Xiao Yao and the others who were being carried away in front of their eyes and said in a mocking tone. Elder Gui laughed contemptuously, a powerful dragon can't suppress a local snake. No matter how powerful they are outside, aren't they still at our mercy once they're here? Protector Chui smiled proudly, Elder Gui is right. We've been suppressed to the point of not daring to say anything along the way. Now, we can finally hold our heads high. Elder Zhuo stroked his beard and said to the two, now is not the time to be happy. It won't be too late to wait until we get the thing. The two cupped their hands and said yes. As for Xiao Yao, who was passing by them, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, but when he looked carefully, it was as if nothing had happened. The next day, when Chu Qingyan and the others woke up, they were in a brightly lit hall. There were people standing on both sides, and all of them were men and women wearing red and white clan uniforms. These people all had sabers, swords, and axes at their waists. Their faces were smeared with red stripes. On one side of the wall hung a sun flag, and on the other hung the fangs of either a tiger or a lion. It looked somewhat terrifying. What attracted Chu Qingyan's attention was the old woman sitting at the head of the table. She was holding a jade walking stick with a skull in her hand. Around her neck was a necklace made of fangs, and on her head was a hairband made of silk. On the right side of her head was a few colorful feathers. She was expressionless, but there was something strange about her. Lu Zhang and Elder Zhuo were sitting right below her. If she hadn't guessed that this person might be the so-called high priestess that they had mentioned before, she would have thought that she was a witch. It was quite scary. At this moment, the so-called high priest spoke, these are the people you were talking about. It doesn't look like much. The moment he spoke, his tone was filled with disdain and frivolity. However, his voice was like a blunt axe sawing wood, extremely hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. Chu Qingyan sneered in her heart. At this moment, Jean Xian looked at Elder Zhuo coldly, what do you mean by this? Protector Chui, who was sitting beside Elder Zhuo, seemed to be looking down at them from the vantage point of a victor. Young sect master, I'm very sorry that we lied to you. We didn't bring you back to inherit the position of sect master, but we needed you to help us achieve our goal. I've long known that you guys are not good people. Xiao Yao spat, but he sat on the ground, weakly, unable to move at all. He asked in surprise, what did you do to us? Lu Zhang laughed, we just used the cultivation dissipation powder to dissolve your martial arts and drugged you, so that you won't be able to move for a short period of time. Despicable, shameless. Sima Jun cursed. Shao and Kong also followed suit and said, Northern nose, toothless. Xiao Su frowned slightly, Kong. Shao and Kong immediately stuck out his tongue. He knew that his father didn't like him like this, so he immediately apologized sincerely, Mother said that we can't always tell the truth. We have to leave some face for others. The truth is always very hurtful. Xiao Yao, Sima Jun and the rest couldn't help but laugh out loud. Xiao Su also revealed a slight smile. However, these people couldn't take it anymore, especially the high priest, cut off this little brat's tongue first. As soon as he finished speaking, someone stepped forward to execute him. Just at this moment, a cold and stern voice sounded, let's see who dares. As soon as the voice fell, his aura became obvious, immediately intimidating everyone present, causing the few thugs to not dare to step forward. Shao and Kong really wanted to kiss his father, how great. The high priest was also stunned by Xiao Su's pressure, and only then did he look at him in the eye. His aura was like a rainbow, although his appearance was slender and tall, but he always felt that his body seemed to be brewing with endless power, making people unable to underestimate him. A child's words carry no harm. As adults, you are too serious. The Grand Emperor rolled his eyes at them. What a bunch of petty people. Furthermore, his little great-grandson didn't say anything wrong. Did this world not allow people to speak the truth? The anger in her chest was suppressed by Xiao Su's aura, and coupled with the fact that she had missed the best opportunity to put on a show of strength, the high priest immediately calmed down. She couldn't be so easily affected by a little child who hadn't even grown hair yet, so she turned a blind eye to Xiao Su's words just now. All of you, leave. Since he's a guest from afar, we should give him some face. Only then can we show the magnanimity of our Sun Blaze sect. The high priest said in a hoarse voice. Ha! He had already drugged and kidnapped someone, yet he still had the cheek to talk about face and magnanimity. Chu Qingyan and the rest felt that this person's ability to reverse right and wrong was not bad, at least not something that ordinary people could do. The flickering candlelight in the hall finally illuminated that face. Jean Xian stared in a daze. The unbearable past buried deep in his memories suddenly jumped out and played out in front of his eyes. Fresh blood slowly dyed Jean Xian's eyes red. He raised his eyes and spoke word by word. I recognize you, High Priest Fu Hong. The High Priest looked at Jean Xian and chuckled hoarsely. I never thought that young sect master would still remember me. I'm very honored. Jean Xian's smile did not reach his eyes. How could I dare to forget? That year, my mother knelt in front of you and begged you to save us. It's fine if you didn't save us, but we had forced you to do so. However, you actually leaked our whereabouts. Although you didn't personally kill my mother, you still have a share in this blood feud. The high priest was a little shocked. The thin and weak young boy from that year had returned after more than 10 years. He had actually grown so much that no one could ignore him. She gently coughed to hide the shock in her eyes. Her gaze was devoid of any warmth as she said, you can't blame me for this. You can only say that your Murong family brought this upon yourselves. Is that so? Jean Xian's eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at her. It's a pity that you brought this upon yourself as well. Now that you've fallen to this point, I'm sure you haven't been living well either. How dare you? Lu Chang angrily rebuked, if you continue to spout such arrogant words, don't blame us for being impolite. Jean Xian ignored this clown and said to the high priest with contempt, what exactly do you want? I haven't returned for more than 10 years. You've gone through so much trouble, what exactly do you want from me? Chapter 1555. As soon as Jean Xian said this, Chu Qingyan and the others all turned to look at the high priest. The high priestess chuckled softly. Her voice was a little creepy. She got up and walked slowly to Jean Xian with the help of her skeletal staff. She looked down at him and said, do you really want to know? Even if you don't tell me now, I'll find out sooner or later. Jean Xian's gaze was distant and fearless. The high priest nodded approvingly. You're indeed her son. Just as everyone was trying to guess who the high priest was referring to was, the high priest's tone changed and became sinister again. Murong boy, what we want is a secret that you're carrying on you. It's about the whereabouts of the Sun Blaze sect's treasure. Treasure? Everyone was shocked. Jean Xian was stunned. He then stared at the high priest with raised brows. When I left North Korea, I didn't bring anything with me. You've got the wrong person. Murong boy, it's normal that you don't know. Only the successor of the Sun Blaze sect will have this item. You don't need to bring it with you. It's already been there since you were 1 year old, the high priest said confidently. Chu Qingyan raised her brows and sneered, how can you be so sure that he's the successor of the Sun Blaze sect? Without waiting for the high priest to answer, Elder Zhua stepped forward and replied, let's not talk about anything else first. The young sect master's appearance is 80% similar to the sect master's. It's just that it can't be faked. Furthermore, we have our own treasures that can distinguish the real from the fake. It seems that these people have something that they don't know about. However, this was not the main point. Chu Qingyan's gaze moved away from the high priest and landed on Elder Zhua. She looked up and smiled. So you've been lying to us from the beginning. When we were in the Sichuan, you should have already sent out a signal to inform Lu Zhang and the others. Then, you put on that show together. At this point, both sides had already shed all pretenses of cordiality. There was nothing left to hide. Elder Zhuo stroked his beard and readily admitted, "That's right, we originally wanted to trick the young sect master back, but you guys interfered, so we had to change our plan. It's a pity that you guys call yourselves the smartest people in Sichuan in vain, but weren't you still fooled by us?" "Is that so?" Chu Qingyan smiled meaningfully. Elder Zhuo felt that her smile was a little strange, but they were already fish on the chopping board, at the mercy of others, so he did not take it to heart. He turned to Jean Xian and said, "There's a mark on your back. It's the image of a key. As long as you follow the image and create the key, you'll be able to open the door to the treasury. Hidden inside are the weapons and jewels that have been passed down for generations in the Sun Blaze sect. It's enough to revitalize our entire Sun Blaze sect." "That's right. With this treasure, why should we be afraid of the Moon Clan? Sooner or later, we'll make them pay for the humiliation they've inflicted on us." Protector Chui's face was full of anger. Jean Xian didn't know that there was such a mark on his back, and it had been there for nearly 20 years. It was simply too shocking. At this moment. "Wait a minute. Don't tell me that you've already been defeated by that whatever Moon Clan? That the Sun Blaze sect is no longer what it was in the past? That you've been hiding here and there like stray cats and dogs, and that this is your hiding place? And that for more than 10 years, you've placed all your hopes on that treasure in an attempt to use it to make a comeback?" Xiao Yao pieced together the facts from their words and his own observations. It had to be said that his ability to observe people's expressions and inference was really top-notch. Because someone flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Who do you think you are? Do you have the right to judge the matters of our Sun Blaze sect?" Lu Cheng angrily pointed at him. If not for the high priest's instructions, he would have slashed him with his blade. Xiao Yao chuckled. "As expected, I guessed correctly. You bunch of greedy, lazy, and immoral thieves who only want to rely on external help and never think of your own efforts. You deserve to be trapped here for the rest of your lives." The high priest leaned on his walking stick and said coldly, "So what if you're right? We've already waited for the key to open the treasury. Do we still have to worry about not being able to revitalize the clan? As long as there are results, the process doesn't matter at all." "The process doesn't matter?" Chu Qingyan raised her eyes that were as cold as ice. "So you can disregard other people's lives and think of ways to capture them when you need them and kick them away when you don't need them? If this is the way your religion does things, I feel that it's a blessing for the people to be destroyed like this." Protector Lu Cheng, Chui, and the others were enraged by her words. Protector Chui turned to the high priest and asked for instructions. "Since the young sect master has been captured, we can take the key from him. The others can be executed on the spot to prevent them from ruining our plans." The high priest was also enraged by Chu Qingyan's words. However, she had to consider Elder Zhuo's previous request after all. She suppressed her anger and said to him, "You said earlier that you would spare their lives. Why?" Elder Zhuo was also very angry, but he did not forget his original intention. He immediately said, "These people's identities are not ordinary, but we're too far away from Sichuan and can't use their identities for the time being. However, they have an elite troop called the Fierce Cavalry. If we can control them, then we'll have such a strong military force at our disposal. It'll be like adding wings to a tiger. When the time comes and we have the treasury, we'll be invincible in North Korea." These words moved everyone. After all, Lu Cheng, Protector Chui, Elder Gui, and the others had seen the power of the Fierce Cavalry with their own eyes, so they all agreed with Elder Zhuo's words. Moreover, compared to death, sometimes living was worse than dying. The high priest nodded and said meaningfully, "Since that's the case, let's keep them alive for now. If we can use them, that would be the best." He had checked these people's weapons. They were more lethal than any of their Sun Blaze sects or even the Tranquil Moon sect's weapons. He was glad that they had planned carefully to hide from these people, which was why they could take them down when they were unprepared. Otherwise, it was hard to imagine how great their chances of victory would be if they fought head-on. Control us? How do you plan to control us? A cold voice rang out. Lu Chang and the others were just planning their wishful thinking when they heard this. They did not think too much and directly said, "Of course we'll use poison. When the centipede scatters and the poison takes effect, you'll be better off dead. At that time, you'll definitely kneel and beg us to give you the antidote. No matter how great your background is or how noble your identity is, you'll still become dogs under our feet." Ha! Lu Chang threw his head back and laughed loudly. Before he could finish laughing, he suddenly screamed and fell straight to the ground. There was even a sharp sword in his chest. This unforeseen event happened too suddenly. Before Elder Zhua and the others could react, they saw the people who should have been lying on the ground unable to move stand up one by one. The atmosphere immediately became strange. Chapter 1556. Those who dared to threaten me have already reported themselves to the underworld. Xiao Su stood up, and his black robe fluttered despite the lack of wind. In an instant, his aura filled the entire hall. The younger ones were so afraid that they didn't dare to look him in the eye. Before Elder Zhua could finish speaking, Chu Qingyan and the others had already stood up and patted the dust off their clothes. It was as if they had just gone for a stroll somewhere. Their expressions were natural and leisurely, and they didn't look like prisoners at all. "What about you? What about me?" Xiao Yao took out a folding fan from his waist and opened it with a whoosh. He covered his face with the fan, revealing a pair of mesmerizing eyes. "We were supposed to play along with you guys, but we couldn't help it. That's why we ended the scene early." "That's right. You guys are too uncreative. The moment you came up, you either wanted to beat us up or kill us. You have no professional ethics at all. Shouldn't you be looking for your treasures as soon as possible? You guys are too dilly-dallying. I really don't want to see you bunch of idiots embarrass yourselves here." Sima Jun looked at the people present with disdain, then stretched out a finger and shook it. Guardian Cui said in shock, "That's not right. Weren't you already drugged? Are you referring to that thing that's soaked in water and drunk as tea?" Ji Linyang asked in a gentle and refined manner. Then, he replied in an incomparably gentle and refined manner, "I'm sorry, but to us, it's really just tea." Elder Zhuo was even more shocked. He looked at Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan in disbelief. "How did you know that we were going back to get drugged?" Jean Xian, who had been silent, said, "It's very simple. You were very anxious when you brought me back, but once we arrived in North Korea, your attitude changed. According to what you said, you should have taken me directly to see the high priest. Unfortunately, you didn't. This doesn't make sense." Elder Zhua nodded. "It seems that there's a flaw here." "A flaw?" Chu Qingyan shook her head and smiled. "You guys are full of flaws. It's not just this place." Elder Gue was a bit indignant. "Where else? They thought that they had done a flawless job." Chu Qingyan said indifferently, "The ambush at the cave entrance. You didn't expect it. I've obviously interrupted your plan. Based on the fact that the Sun Moon Clan and the Sun Moon Clan are like fire and water, Lu Zhang should have pursued the Sun Moon Clan and not simply chased them away. This is very suspicious. Therefore, we guessed that Lu Zhang's original target wasn't the Sun Moon Clan. However, we only found out the reason today. So it was here. The appearance of the Moon Clan was indeed unexpected, but I didn't want to be the catalyst for you to see through our plan." Elder Zhua sighed. Sima Jun chuckled. "Ha, did you think that we started suspecting you from the moment you entered North Korea? Isn't it?" Protector Cui asked unhappily. Xiao Yao waved his fan and looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. "It was even earlier than this. When you appeared in the palace, my elder brother and sister-in-law suspected you. Except for Jean Xian's identity, to be honest, we didn't believe much of what you said." Protector Cui was impulsive. When he met Xiao Yao's provocative gaze, he couldn't hold it in anymore. However, he was suppressed by Elder Zhua's gaze. Elder Zhua was interested in their words. He didn't seem as timid as before. It was as if he had straightened his back and looked at Chu Qingyan and the others. Although our plan wasn't flawless, it wasn't that easy to find a flaw in it. I'm very curious. How did you see through it? Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. How can people like us, who are used to scheming and plotting, not see through hypocrisy and hypocrisy? You attacked Jean Xian and my child the moment you appeared. I can tell that your character isn't very good. Although you said that Jean Xian was your young sect leader, your eyes never showed any respect for him. Your acting was also too superficial. In North Korea, you were hesitant about your clan's matters. We knew that you were hiding something. Do you think we would believe people who we didn't know the ins and outs of? Moreover, she looked at Elder Zhua and the others. The sarcasm in her eyes made them unable to hide. Outsiders are not allowed to interfere in internal conflicts like yours. However, you didn't object to our participation. I believe that your original purpose was to take Jean Xian away. However, you changed your mind when you saw us. If you didn't have a guilty conscience, you wouldn't have violated the rules of your country. After all, the reason why your country is so mysterious is that outsiders are not allowed to set foot in it. Elder Zhua's face turned red from her analysis. It wasn't that she was too good at it, but that she was using it to make them useless. Chu Qingyan didn't care about the others' expressions after she finished speaking. She turned to the person beside her and said with a smile, "Big Ice Cube, what do you think of my explanation?" Xiao Su looked down at her. There was no longer any hostility in his eyes. They were unbelievably gentle. He raised a hand to pat her head and smiled. Very good. Everyone felt as if they had been fed a mouthful of dog food without warning. Sima Jun turned her head and threw herself into Ji Linyang's arms. She whimpered, "The dog food is so disgusting." Ji Linyang patted her back gently. "It's okay. We have dog food too." Jean Xian held Xining's hand. Father Chu hugged Mother Chu's shoulders. Xiao Yao, Huo Ling, and the other single dogs wanted to dig their eyes out. It was too painful. They were being fed dog food left and right. This group of people boasted shamelessly and didn't take the Sun Blaze sect seriously. However, they had to admit that they didn't fall for the trap. The high priest was infuriated. He was about to order people to arrest them, but before he could do so, a group of people had already rushed in from outside. Weren't those the so-called fierce cavalry who had been drugged and locked up? With the fierce cavalry's powerful combat ability, these people weren't their match at all. In addition, Huo Ling and the other single dogs had nowhere to vent their anger, so they vented it all on this group of people. The Sun Blaze sect people were simply hung up and beaten. Soon, the high priest, Elder Zhua, and the others were subdued. Xiao Su waved his sleeves and sat at the head of the table. Chu Qingyan sat beside him. The others lined up on either side. Every dog has its day. Today, it's my day. The people who had been abusing their power earlier were now prisoners kneeling on the ground. You bunch of foreigners invading our North Korea. One day, you will be chased out. The high priest's voice was hoarse. It was as unpleasant as a male duck. Chu Qingyan chuckled. You brought us in. Don't try to shirk your responsibility. All right, Huo Ling, gag her mouth. It's too unpleasant. The high priest, who had always been high and mighty, was treated like this. His eyes turned red with anger. He was about to curse when his mouth was gagged. Upon closer inspection, it was actually someone's broken sock. The high priest's eyes widened and he fainted from anger. Chu Qingyan ignored this person. She looked at Elder Zhua and said calmly, "Actually, the Sun Blaze sect has already declined. Tell us, what are you hiding from us?" Chapter 1557. Elder Zhua saw that his men were either captured or killed, and understood that the situation was hopeless. In addition, he had interacted with Chu Qingyan during this period of time, and was very clear of these people's capabilities, so he did not make any more desperate attempts. Since things have come to this, there's nothing left to hide. At this point, Elder Zhua ignored Protector Cui and Elder Gui's advice and slowly revealed the truth. It turned out that Sect Master Murong favored his concubine and neglected his wife was a scheme of the Tranquil Moon sect. Their goal was to make Sect Master Murong lose the hearts of the people first, then use that concubine to steal the Murong family's secrets, which were some of the Sun Blaze sect's defensive secrets, and then hand them over to the Tranquil Moon sect. Nobody could stop the Tranquil Moon sect from entering the Sun clan's territory, exterminating the Murong family, heavily injuring the Sun Blaze sect, and taking over the Sun clan's territory. Back then, Jin Xian and his mother were chased away and escaped the disaster. However, the Tranquil Moon sect did not get the Sun Blaze sect's treasure, and suspected that the key was with Jin Xian, so they sent people to hunt him down. The people left behind by the Sun Blaze sect, namely the High Priest and Elder Zhua, brought their remaining subordinates to hide, searching for Jin Xian while guarding against the Tranquil Moon sect, and lived a life of hiding. Later, they found out that Jin Xian had escaped from North Korea, so they sent Elder Zhua and the others to search for him. When they returned this time, only the 3 of them were left. The others had all died in the hands of the Tranquil Moon sect's people. Elder Zhua and the others had lured Jin Xian back for the sake of the secret of his treasure trove. Once they obtained the treasure trove, they could revive the Sun Blaze sect and take back what originally belonged to them. Then, they could rush to the Moon clan for revenge. Unfortunately, before they could do all this, Xiao Su appeared halfway and bit the gold. They even thought of a scheme on top of a scheme to coerce Xiao Su, Chu Qingyan, and the others to do things for them. Who knew that in the end, they went for wool and came home shorn. Elder Zhua's confession made everyone feel a little incredulous. Just relying on these people to compete with a powerful sect, they were overestimating themselves. However, what was even more shocking was that the Sun Blaze sect had already become an empty shell with no future. Mr. Chu turned his head and patted Jin Xian on the shoulder. He said regretfully, "Jin Xian, there's nothing left when you come back. Why don't we go back? We still have a lot of delicious food and fun things at home. Unlike here, it's so shabby and not fun at all." Alright. Jin Xian did not have much affection for this place to begin with. If it were not for the fact that he wanted to put an end to his past, he would never have set foot in North Korea. To him, this place had become a nightmare. However, when Jin Xian agreed, Elder Zhua shook his head anxiously. "Young sect master, you cannot leave. The hope of the Sun Blaze sect is on you. If you leave, then the Sun clan will really be finished." Elder Gui and the rest were also anxious. "That's right, young sect master. The Sun Blaze sect is your home, and the Murong family was destroyed by the Tranquil Moon sect. Don't you want to take revenge and let your mother and master rest in peace?" These words caused Jin Xian to stiffen slightly. His expression changed when he thought of his mother and master. Sima Jun found it very funny. "You guys wanted to kidnap Jin Xian when you thought he had no one to rely on. Later, when you knew we were there, you wanted to set us up. Now that you know there's nothing you can do, you want to use morality to force him to do things for you guys. You guys are the good guys, and the benefits are also yours. You guys. Your skin is really thicker than the city walls. The heavens are watching. Aren't you afraid of retribution?" Sima Jun's words caused Elder Zhua and the rest to turn red. However, they could not refute it because it was the truth. Jin Xian had already regained his composure. He looked at the few people in front of him and did not know what words to use to describe them. "Those who bullied my mother and harmed my master back then, I will naturally take revenge on them one by one." Seeing this, Elder Zhua and the rest felt that there was hope and immediately added fuel to the fire. "Young sect master, if you want to take revenge, you have to revive the Sun Blaze sect first and let it help you." Hearing this, Jin Xian seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. After laughing twice, his gaze was cold. "What right do you have to plan my path? You guys did not do anything back then and even watched us get bullied by the side. You still have the delusion that I will repay evil with good? I must take revenge, but I don't need to rely on the Sun Blaze sect. I have family and friends. do you think I need you fence-sitters? After Jean Xan finished speaking, he bowed to his master. Master, I may need your and His Highness' help in the following matters. Xiao Su immediately expressed his stance, there's no need to speak as if we're family. Xiao Su never spoke nonsense and always carried out what he said. In the past few years, Jean Xian had been loyal and devoted to his little fellow. Xiao Su had seen it all and had long regarded him as one of his own. These words were to establish Jean Xian's authority and support him. Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. Big Ice Cube's intentions were her intentions. Elder Zhuo still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Jin Xin. I don't want to listen to your flowery words anymore. Xiao Su gave the order and these people were all taken away and locked up. After the people from the Sun Blaze sect were taken away, Jean Xian bowed deeply to his master and Xiao Su, Master, His Highness, and everyone else, Jean Xian is unable to repay your great kindness. Please accept Jean Xian's bow. Before he could kneel, Jean Xian's hand was held by Xiao Su. Xiao Su's gaze was deep as he placed his trust in him, don't be in a hurry to thank me. It won't be too late to say it after you've taken your revenge. Jean Xian was taken aback. His eyes then rippled with smiles as he nodded heavily, yes, this subordinate obeys. Chu Qingyan looked at the two of them and her heart was suddenly filled with warmth. In the past, Big Ice Cube didn't have anyone close to him. Later on, he had her and his parents. Later on, he also started to treat her family and friends as his own. Perhaps it was because he loved her, but she knew that from now on, Big Ice Cube would never be alone again. Chu Qingyan blinked her slightly wet eyes and then lowered her head to teach her son, did you learn anything from what you've experienced these past few days? Shaoan Kong thought for a moment and nodded, heaven is watching what we do. We can't do bad things. He must have taken Sima's words to heart. Anything else? Shaoan Kong thought, also, baby has to work hard to become stronger so that he can protect himself and the people he wants to protect. Chu Qingyan stroked his head in relief, not bad. Good and evil will be rewarded in the end. Maintain a positive heart and don't be bullied by others. Also, don't bully others. Do it with a clear conscience. Qingyan's class was on show every day. Xiao Su looked at his wife and son, a smile appearing in his eyes. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from outside. Everyone immediately became alert. Could it be that the High Priestess had reinforcements? When everyone was ready to fight, a beautiful face appeared in front of everyone. Master, am I late? Chapter 1558. It was Water Spirit. Everyone was pleasantly surprised. Water Spirit, why are you here? Wood Spirit couldn't help but ask. Normally, she should be in charge of intelligence in the Sichuan Kingdom. Water Spirit scanned the crowd. When she saw that her masters were all safe and sound, she quickly walked in and replied to Wood Spirit, I'm here to protect you, of course. She immediately bowed to Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan. Master, young Princess Consort, I've arrived with 100 pigeon feathers. We're ready for your orders. Xiao Su nodded. Very good. Xiao Yao was shocked. He sized up Water Spirit and the others and asked incredulously, it's not easy to enter North Korea. There are many checkpoints along the way. How did you get here? Not to mention the mountain gate, the design of the pond was difficult to decipher without knowing the inside story. Could it be that Imperial Brothers' subordinates could fly? This was not only Xiao Yao's question, but everyone else's as well. At this moment, Ji Linyang answered everyone's doubts. Brother Xiao and I left marks along the way. Water Spirit only needed to follow the clues we gave her to find her way in. Realization dawned on everyone. Xiao Yao was even more shocked. He didn't expect Imperial Brother to have a backup plan. No wonder Third Brother said that you shouldn't oppose Imperial Brother. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know how you died. At this moment, Water Spirit suddenly said mysteriously to everyone, guess who else I've brought along? Everyone looked at each other. Was there going to be another surprise? After receiving everyone's curiosity, Water Spirit turned around and smiled charmingly at the gate. Why aren't you coming out? Haven't you had enough fun playing hide-and-seek for a few years? Just as everyone was waiting anxiously, a beautiful couple appeared in front of them, hand in hand. The woman's beauty was unparalleled, while the man's elegance was refined. If they weren't Yen Luo and Ethereal, who else could they be? Chu Qingyan sprang to her feet in excitement. She hurried over to greet her with tears in her eyes. Yen Luo, you're finally back. Cheng Yen Luo hurried over and held her best friend's hand. Her voice was choked with sobs as she said, "Yes, I'm back. It's such a pity that I missed your wedding and your baby. But don't worry, I won't miss it in the future. It's okay. Back then, you left your hometown to help me save Xijing. I can't thank you enough." Chu Qingyan felt a little guilty. "Little princess, this is our duty as doctors. You don't owe us anything, but can you let go of Xiao Yan's hand first?" Seeing the young princess consort and his wife being so clingy, Ethereal couldn't stand it any longer and immediately interjected in an attempt to bring his wife back to his side. Cheng Yen Luo had long seen through his little tricks. For so many years, as long as he could stick by her side, this person would do anything. Now that he was back, he was still acting like this. Wasn't he afraid of being laughed at? She rolled her eyes at Ethereal. "Go away. Go find your brothers and catch up. Don't bother us." Kong Ling could only go find his brothers in an aggrieved manner. Hua Ling saw him looking back 3 times with a reluctant expression and slapped him in a resentful manner. Yo, you're a guy who forgets his friends when he sees a girl." Ethereal retracted his gaze and turned into a male god in a second. He glanced at Hua Ling, "Take your claws away, or I'll apply medicine." The fire spirit glared at him and unwillingly pulled back his claws. He then turned to complain to the earth spirit, "This fellow is still the same. To his wife, he's as warm as spring, but to us, he's as cold as winter. There's no harm without comparison." Turin couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, Ethereal walked forward and hugged Turin. "Brother, long time no see." The earth spirit patted him on the shoulder in response. Hua Ling felt like he had been abandoned by the entire world. He moved to Father Chu's side to seek comfort. "Old man, I'm so pitiful." Father Chu reached out and patted his head. "Good boy." Hua Ling instantly felt the warmth of spring, but he also felt that something was wrong. Why did he feel like the old man was patting Bai Yutang's triplets? Just as Cheng Yen Luo sat down, a soft and fluffy ball came to her feet. She lowered her head and saw a young child with beautiful makeup smiling at her. Her heart was bursting with joy as she immediately carried him up and asked, "Qing Yan, this must be your little brat, right? He's so pretty." "Yen Luo Yi is even prettier," Little and Kong said in a childish voice. Chu Qingyan was very helpless towards this son of hers. Every time he saw a beautiful girl or a handsome guy, he would eagerly go over. Cheng Yen Luo kissed him heavily. She felt that this child was really too sensible and adorable. She couldn't bear to part with him. Ethereal and Water Spirit both greeted their masters. After Xiao Su asked them a few questions about their experiences on the road, he let them go about their duties and prepare for the upcoming trip to North Korea. However, Water Spirit glanced at the door before she went down. She looked puzzled. Chu Qingyan noticed her strange behavior and couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Water Spirit thought for a moment and replied, "Young Master Dongting and Miss Tao were following us on the road just now. I don't know why they're gone now." Chu Qingyan was very surprised that Dongting and Tao Tao had actually come. She couldn't be more surprised. "Why are they here?" Water Spirit shook her head. "This subordinate doesn't know either. When we arrived at the foot of the mountain that day, we saw young Master Dongting and Miss Tao waiting there. After we explained our purpose, they came with us. Could it be that Dongting decided to come to North Korea after receiving her letter?" Chu Qingyan guessed. Ethereal overheard their conversation and came over to help explain. I think I heard young Master Dongting say that he wanted to go sightseeing, and then Miss Tao Tao followed him. Perhaps they're out sightseeing now and will be back soon. I see. Then this subordinate will send Pigeon Feather to find out where they are. Water Spirit volunteered to take on the task. Chu Qingyan nodded. It wasn't safe here. After all, this wasn't their territory, so it was better for them to reunite as soon as possible. At this moment, she couldn't help but look around. Including Dongting and the others, all the good friends she had made in her life were basically right in front of her. An indescribable feeling grew in her heart. Xiao Su held her hand. Using his strength and warmth, he told her that he would never leave her. Chu Qingyan tilted her head and looked at his handsome side profile. The corners of her eyes turned up. She smiled and held his hand back. Why do I feel like we're not here to help Jean Xin find his relatives? Instead, we're here as a group for a vacation. As far as the eye could see, Ethereal and Yen Luo were playing around in Kong. Sima and Ji Linyang were flirting with each other. Grandfather Emperor and Father Emperor were sparring with each other. Jean Xin and Xining were hiding in a corner and whispering to each other. Turin, Wood Spirit, Fire Spirit, Water Spirit, and the others were catching up on old times. The scene was lively and heartwarming. It didn't look like they were in a foreign land and had enemies eyeing them covetously. Xiao Su chuckled softly. I'll make up for the honeymoon trip I owe you. Chapter 1559. However, Higashio Motetsu did not walk around like he said, but stood on the roof of a house not far from where Chu Qingyan and the rest were, looking at them from afar. Tao Tao stood beside him with her arms crossed, looking puzzled. Since you want to see her so much, why don't you go with Water Spirit and the rest? Higashio Motetsu smiled, the flirtatious look in his eyes faded. Is it that important whether I see her or not? I miss her at first sight. Tao Tao said without hesitation. Hearing that, he couldn't help but look at her. From what you're saying, I can't tell that you're saying this to your sweetheart. Tao Tao snorted lightly. What? You want me to be jealous? After so many years, if I were to be jealous, the surrounding 100 miles would be filled with the smell of my jealousy. I'm not stupid, after all, it's first come first serve. You miss her, you like her, that's something I can't control. If I were to be calculative, I would have long been angered to death by you. He felt that her nonsense was quite reasonable and reached out his hand to pat her head. You're a promising child. But let me give you a word of advice. I'm a prodigal son, I won't stay for anyone. So benefactor, it's better for you to repent as soon as possible. After saying that, he confidently turned around and stepped onto another roof. It seemed slow, but he had already walked far away. Tao Tao looked at his gradually disappearing back view and sighed faintly. How could she not care that he still liked Chu Qingyan? Every time he said Chu Qingyan's name, her heart would ache. Actually, it wasn't that she didn't want to say it, it was that she didn't care. Sometimes, even if she didn't say it, her heart would care the most. But what could she do? First come first serve. She could only say that she appeared too late and didn't manage to grab hold of his heart earlier. But she wouldn't tell him this. Because he wasn't hers yet, and she hadn't won his heart yet, she was already interfering with his life. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't like it. Therefore, she could only swallow the bitterness of the chase alone, and no one could talk to. This was the path she had chosen. No matter how difficult it was, she could only endure it herself. Just as she was in a daze, the purple figure in front of her suddenly stopped and turned to look at her with a frown. Hey, clingy bug, why are you standing there like a fool? Hurry up and catch up. The disappointment in her heart just now dissipated because of his words. She pursed her lips and smiled provocatively. Where are you going? In love, there were times like this. She would cry because of his words, as if she had been abandoned by the whole world, but she would also be overjoyed because of his words, as if she had obtained the whole world. In love, the person who loves deeply will always love more humbly. Even the proud little magic doctor Tao Tao, who had been spoiled since she was a child, couldn't avoid it. Higashio Motetsu raised his eyebrows. Didn't you say that there's a flower field in front that you want to take a look? If you continue to be so slow, don't blame me for leaving first. Tao Tao's eyes lit up, and she flew up. Don't go, wait for me. Higashio Motetsu pursed his lips. So slow. But he still waited for her to get close before continuing forward. The two figures' clothes fluttered as they walked further and further away. I've been poor for so many years, and all I ask is that you're willing to wait for me when you leave. Dripping water can penetrate a stone, and an iron rod can be ground into a needle. Mountain rocks aren't heartless, and iron rods aren't invincible. Everything is in the silence of time. Sichuan Imperial Palace. The new emperor who had just ascended the throne a few days ago sat in the imperial garden with his beautiful empress. Pang Zhijing looked at the phoenix robe she was wearing and cupped her face in disbelief. Xiao Ho, even in my dreams, I would never have thought that I would become the empress of a country one day. Xiao Ho raised his hand and placed it on her cheek. His thumb brushed the corner of her mouth, removing the crumbs that had accidentally gotten on her while she was eating. However, he didn't take his hand back. He touched her face. It was smooth and delicate, like a peeled egg. He couldn't bear to part with it. And Pang Zhijing seemed to be used to him touching and pinching. But being used to it was one thing, and blushing was another. She gave a low cough, like she was reminding him of his earlier question. Xiao Ho had long seen her every move. Seeing this, the corners of his mouth curled up. His other hand circled around her waist and forcefully lifted her up. After a moment of dizziness, she was already sitting in his arms. Pang Zhijing's face turned as red as a tomato. She grabbed his sleeve and protested in a low voice, Hey, in any case, you're the ruler of a country, and I'm also the empress of a country. We can't hug each other in public, where's the propriety? Can't you see that everyone else is watching? Pay attention to your image, hey. Xiao Ho seemed to have only heard the latter half of her words or purposely ignored the first half. He pulled her into his arms. Look around. Pang Zhijing was angry. This person was too much. He didn't listen when she said he would. He was talking, but he was so close. His hot breath was by her ear, it was so itchy. If Xiao Ho knew that his empress was so lacking in emotion, he would probably teach her himself. Even though she thought that, she still turned to look around. Where was everyone? Wasn't he still here just now? Why did it feel like there was only her and the shameless person left in this garden? She searched for a long time. When she turned around to ask him, before she could speak, he blocked all her words. Originally, he wanted to kiss her until she had no energy left so that she wouldn't have to worry about this and that because of their status, but Xiao Ho still couldn't bear it. She might look like a little tiger, but he knew that she was very shy outside. After a light kiss, Xiao Ho finally let go of her. Pang Zhijing glared at him while panting. However, her cheeks were rosy and her beauty was unparalleled. This made Xiao Ho's heart itch and he kissed her again. In the end, Pang Zhijing couldn't help but cover her mouth. She looked at him proudly. Let's see how he's going to sneak attack her now. Xiao Ho found it funny that she would always do such childish things. She was simply a clown. The self-satisfied Pang Zhijing didn't stay happy for long. She stared with wide eyes as that handsome face came closer and closer. Then, the back of her hand became wet and warm. After he moved back, she finally realized that her face had become hot. As expected, ginger was the spiciest when it was shameless. You bad silver, always bullying me. Pang Zhijing covered her mouth with one hand and pointed at him with the other. Her face was red as she complained. However, this kind of feast for the eyes didn't have any deterrence. Instead, it made Xiao Ho want to tease her. This is bullying. Xiao Ho played with her black hair that fell on his knees. His smile was enough to make all living things fall. Then what about tonight? Peng Zhijing was stunned. Only then did she react. She immediately covered her ears with both hands. You pervert. Before the word, pervert, could come out, it was swallowed by him. The siege was a success. Little rascal, you're too stupid. You lost your defense so quickly. While they were entangled, she seemed to hear him softly laughing at her. However, she was already entangled by him to the point where she couldn't refute. She could only sigh again. This ginger was the spiciest when it was shameless. Chapter 1560. When they separated for the last time, Peng Zhijing finally learned to be smart. She hugged his waist and buried her face in his chest. No matter how he coaxed her, she wouldn't come out. Xiao Ho knew that if he continued to tease her, even if little rascal was a paper tiger, if she didn't listen to him, he wouldn't be able to get anything good out of her tonight. Because even though little Ball liked him, her imperial father, no matter what happened, she would always stand on her imperial mother's side. She could escape today, but she couldn't escape tonight. Xiao Ho wasn't in a hurry. He gently patted little rascal's back and slowly exhaled the hot air in his chest. Do you think that with your jumpy personality, you won't be on the same side as the Empress? This was returning to her question from the beginning. Originally, she had only asked because she was interested. After the torment just now, she had already thrown this question to the back of her mind. Now that he had come back to it, she didn't know why, but she was more interested than before. But she had learned her lesson and didn't raise her head. She replied in a muffled voice in his arms, yes, it's unbelievable. What's so surprising about it? Didn't I also become the emperor? Xiao Ho replied with a smile. This answer was a bit out of her expectations. Peng Zhijing couldn't care about anything else. She raised her head from his arms and tugged at his sleeve. Xiao Ho lowered his head to look at her. I remember when I first met you, didn't you want to be the emperor? Why did you change your mind now? Her eyes were filled with confusion. Xiao Ho smiled, just treat me as young and ignorant. What the hell? Young and ignorant? Are you fucking kidding me? Peng Zhijing was dumbfounded. He knew that she would have this reaction. Xiao Ho originally wouldn't talk about this matter in the future and hadn't told her. Now that she brought it up, Xiao Ho didn't want to hide it from her. Back then, didn't you want to persuade me to give up on revenge? Xiao Ho stroked the stray hair in front of her forehead and continued, however, I didn't listen to your advice. I directed and acted out a play and pushed you off a cliff. I regret this very much. It's all in the past. Don't blame yourself. Peng Zhijing regretted bringing up this topic, but when she wanted to stop him, he continued. It was also after you fell off the cliff that I realized that I had already lost the most precious thing in my life. Revenge and seizing the throne had completely lost their attraction to me. People often don't cherish things when they have them. Only when they lose them will they regret it. Little rascal, Peng Zhijing was stunned by his affectionate analysis. Before she could feel the ecstasy in her heart, she heard him calling her. She looked up and met his eyes. Xiao Ho stared at her. His beautiful and bright eyes were filled with confusion. He was a little absent-minded, but at the same time, he rejoiced. The emotions in his eyes were as deep as before. He said slowly, word by word, before I lost you, I didn't think that I still had a world to collapse. I thought that after Mother left, I would no longer be able to learn what it meant to be heartbroken. But when you broke free from my hand, I slowly lost track of you from my life. Only then did I know that I still had a world that collapsed because of you. If the heavens are willing to give me another chance, I'm willing to give up my hatred, give up everything, just for you. Peng Zhijing heard what he wanted to tell her. She was his world, a life that he couldn't lose. She was incomparably moved and shocked. It turned out that he cared and loved her more than she had imagined. She reached out and hugged him tightly. I won't leave you in the future, so your world is still safe and sound. Xiao Ho hugged her back. How could it be safe and sound? His world had already been shattered once. Although it had been fixed, it still needed to be carefully protected. Little rascal, you're right. If you cling to hatred, you'll lose yourself. It's just like how I've been seeking revenge on the wrong person all these years. Pang Zhijing was incomparably shocked. What? Wasn't the person who killed your mother Empress Liang and the others? Xiao Ho revealed a faint smile. There was no warmth in his smile, only ridicule. I never thought that the person who killed my mother and slaughtered the entire Luo family was actually that beast of a father emperor. Pang Zhijing was completely shocked. She had been recuperating these past few years. Although she knew a bit about his recent situation, she knew nothing about these palace intrigues. When she came back this time, she saw that he was getting along well with Xiao Su and the others. She thought that they had abandoned their former enmity and let go of their grudges. She never thought that it was because Xiao Ho's true enemy wasn't Xiao Su, but someone else. From this, she could imagine how much hatred and pain he felt when he found out that his enemy was his father emperor. Xiao Ho, we have to think on the bright side. When I left that year, it was actually a good thing. Although I ruined your plan, it was also because of this that I stopped you from taking revenge. It allowed you to see the truth and recognize who the true mastermind was. Because of this, you gained your own hands and feet. In a lonely life, you had someone to accompany you. You got your revenge and you had brothers by your side. Isn't this a blessing in disguise? I suddenly feel that everything that happens in life has its own reason, and it's not meaningless. Pang Zhijing seriously analyzed it for him, trying her best to let him forget about the past. Xiao Ho quietly listened. In the end, he planted a kiss on her forehead and gently said, "That's right. You're really the only little fortune in my life." Pang Zhijing reached out to hold his face and said in a serious tone that could not be refuted, "I'm really sorry that I wasn't by your side at that time and let you experience the most painful and dark time alone. So don't blame yourself, alright? The matter of us not being by each other's side is even." Xiao Ho looked into her eyes and was stunned for a moment. Then, he realized that she wanted him to completely free himself from that period of guilt. His eyes curved into a gentle smile. "All right." Pang Zhijing finally put down the large stone in her heart. She prepared to let go, but unexpectedly, he hugged her even tighter. "Empress, it's getting dark. We should go to bed." The sun was clearly still hanging in the sky, all right? What was this person thinking all day long? "You're ruining the atmosphere too much." She puffed up her cheeks and said angrily. Xiao Ho carried her towards the palace. "It's fine. We can slowly build the atmosphere in bed." Pang Zhijing subconsciously swallowed. How could it be like this? Weren't they just talking about life and ideals? Why did it suddenly develop in that direction? "Your Majesty, this concubine just remembered that I need to go see Little Ball. The eunuch already came by once. Little Ball is learning to play the zither right now. I'm afraid that he won't be able to take care of his imperial mother." "Then, Empress, don't think of any more ideas. Just obediently go to bed with us." "Woo-woo, this concubine can't do it." Chapter 1561. After cleaning up the entire stronghold, Tu Ling and the others did not find anything of value. It could be seen that the Sun Blaze sect was already at the end of its rope. From a flourishing sect, it had fallen to its current state, which made them sigh. After the reorganization, Water's spirit was sent out to scout for information. Turan and Hualing each had their own duties. One arranged for a shadow guard, while the other led a group of bodyguards to protect their masters. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan led Jin Xian, Yen Luo, and the others out of the stronghold and walked towards the so-called downtown area. Although Elder Zhua and the others have bad intentions towards us, I have to admit that they were able to persevere for so many years under such circumstances. Chu Qingyan sighed. That can only mean one thing. They've been successfully brainwashed by their religion, Xiao Su said, hitting the nail on the head. Chu Qingyan deeply agreed. After knowing the cause and effect, she felt that it was really lucky for the country to be able to go so far under the control of these two sections. The group of four had just walked into the lively street. There were peddlers selling goods on both sides. When they saw that Chu Qingyan and the others were dressed differently, they immediately shouted with all their might. "Have you noticed the way these people are dressed?" Chu Qingyan suddenly heard her big ice cube ask in a low voice as they walked. She blinked. Big Ice Cube wouldn't ask about unimportant things. She immediately observed the people around them and found that in this lively and bustling place, not only were there peddlers, but also the people who came and went. Their clothes were very shabby and their expressions were very panicked. They didn't fit in with this rich place. Big Ice Cube, why are the people in this place a little strange? Xiao Su narrowed his eyes. We need to investigate. Jean Xian heard the conversation between his two masters and also looked around. Previously, he only paid attention to whether there were any suspicious people. This was an occupational disease as a bodyguard. Now that he paid attention, he found that these Ri people seemed to be living a very difficult life. However, this was one of the wealthiest towns in the Ri clan. This shouldn't be the case. At this time, Jean Xian saw a group of people walking over from the intersection not far away. They were wearing white and blue striped Yu clan clothes. He immediately pointed to them. "Mistress, look at those people." When Chu Qingyan looked in the direction he was pointing, she saw that the leader of the Moon clan had kicked over a stall selling chestnuts. He then raised his foot and crushed a pear that was being sold at another stall. The people behind him were laughing so hard that they were convulsing with laughter. They were extremely arrogant. Chu Qingyan noticed that the commoners were angry, but they did not dare to say anything. Even when their things were broken, they did not dare to make a sound. Their bodies were trembling violently, and this made the Moon race people even more arrogant. Along the way, many stall owners suffered. If anyone protested, they would be beaten up. That group of people directly walked into a pawn shop, threw a money bag and walked out. Then, they walked into a rice shop, carried a few bags of rice and swaggered out, completely ignoring the cries of the shop owners. If anyone tried to stop them, they would directly kick them. Damn it! Cheng Yenluo tugged at her handkerchief. Xining suddenly exclaimed, "That old man is vomiting blood." As doctors, Cheng Yenluo and Ethereal naturally couldn't ignore this. They pushed through the crowd and went to support the old man. Ethereal inserted a silver needle into the old man's body to stop the bleeding. He opened his eyes weakly. When he saw Ethereal and the others, he said gratefully, "Thank you. This is too inhumane. Is no one going to do anything about it?" Cheng Yenluo said angrily as she took out a bottle of medicine from her sleeve. The onlookers shook their heads and smiled bitterly. "How can we do anything about it? They're all from the Yu clan." Jean Xian's eyes narrowed. His tone was slightly agitated. "So what if they're from the Yu clan?" When the people saw Jean Xian's attire, they didn't laugh at him for not knowing the inside story. Instead, they said earnestly, "Young man, that's because you don't know. The Yu clan and the Sun clan are sworn enemies. Ever since the Sun Blaze sect declined, there was no one to protect us. The Yu clan gradually took over our territory and vented their past grievances on us commoners. They burned, killed, looted, and committed all kinds of crimes. It's not that we didn't fight back, but it was all in vain. Without protection, we're like rootless duckweed. We'll be bullied wherever we go. Moreover, the Yu clan is vicious and cruel. We can't beat them at all." The commoners spoke one after another, as if they had found a tree hole. They told Jean Xian and the others everything that had happened in the past. Those heinous incidents were unbearable for the audience. "Then what do you plan to do in the future?" Chu Qingyan asked a few of the commoners. She heard them laugh bitterly. "What else can we do? We'll just muddle along and live one day at a time. Anyway, with the heavens and earth as a furnace, who isn't suffering bitterly?" After saying that, they gradually dispersed. However, Their footsteps were light and they began to repeat their daily routine, like walking corpses. Chu Qingyan could see that these people were no longer angry. They no longer had any hope for life. They've been oppressed and are not treated as humans. If a clan is broken from the roots and there's no new force to replace it, they'll lose their fighting spirit. If this continues, sooner or later, they'll be destroyed. Xiao Su evaluated objectively, as if he could see the Sun clan a few years later. Jean Xian looked around in a daze. The commoners and peddlers had returned to their original places. Some were walking and some were peddling their wares, as if the Yu clan's attack had never happened. He muttered, "Why is it like this? Young man, this is very normal. The Moon clan has imposed a heavy tax on each of our families. If we can't pay, what awaits us is not only a vicious beating, but also the men will be banished to the army and the women will be sold to the brothel. So we have to live, we have to live." The old man's injuries had recovered a lot. With the help of Ethereal, he slowly stood up and said sadly. Chu Qingyan, Cheng Yanluo, and the others were in disbelief. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but curse, "Is he still human? He's a devil who eats human flesh and drinks human blood. And us commoners who have lost our protection, aren't we struggling on the verge of death?" The old man shook his head, his turbid eyes glistening with tears. Everyone was silent, their hearts full of complicated feelings. At this time, the old man thanked Ethereal and the others again for saving his life. However, he couldn't say much to them. He had just lost a few bags of rice, and he had to find a way to make up for it. Chu Qingyan looked at the old man's back as he left. She couldn't bear it. He was supposed to be enjoying his old age, but he still had to struggle to live. She couldn't help but sigh. At this time, Jean Xian suddenly said to her, "Master, this subordinate wants to leave for a while." Chu Qingyan nodded in agreement. Jean Xian immediately turned and left. Looking at his back, she didn't feel at ease. Xiao Su held her hand and said calmly, "Let him go. He needs time to digest all of this. After all, he still has feelings for this place." Chu Qingyan sighed softly. These facts were really too cruel for Jean Xian, but it was undoubtedly a kind of growth for him. Chapter 1562. After Jean Xian left, Xining was still worried. She asked for permission and followed him. Cheng Yanluo and Ethereal also left to walk around. Chu Qingyan looked at the bustling streets. The faces in front of her were expressionless, as if they were repeating mechanical actions. There was no vitality and no hope. She stopped in her tracks. She felt that she could no longer walk around with a clear conscience. "What's wrong?" Xiao Su asked with concern, sensing her emotional fluctuations. She looked up and saw the people walking around in front of her. She looked at him sympathetically. "Big Ice Cube, I feel sorry for them. Do you want to save them?" Xiao Su was silent for a while. "But we're not saviors." Chu Qingyan looked at him. Xiao Su continued, "We're from Sichuan. We belong to another country. It's not good for us to interfere in other people's political affairs, unless what?" she asked quickly. Xiao Su smiled faintly. "Unless we have a good reason to act." "A good reason to act?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. Then, an idea flashed through her mind. Jean Xian. "That's right, it's trust." Xiao Su smiled faintly. "That's right. As long as he says that he wants to help these people, we have a good reason to act. Otherwise, we can only help him find his enemies and take revenge." Chu Qingyan was elated, but she soon felt dejected. She rubbed her nose. "But we don't know if Jean Xian will think the same way as us." Xiao Su patted the back of her hand and said calmly, "Don't worry. He has the same blood as them. He'll feel the same way. He just needs time to self-regulate and get over it." She was relieved that Big Ice Cube had said so. Actually, she wasn't a sentimental person. It was just that she couldn't help but want to stand up when she saw some unfair and inhumane things. If everyone stood by and did nothing, what would happen to the world? She just wanted to help when she saw injustice. Xiao Su held her hand and walked back. Let's go back. She nodded heavily. All right. The two outstanding figures gradually disappeared into the distance. Two figures appeared where Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan had been standing. I have to admit that your love rival is better than you in terms of IQ, EQ, and eloquence. Tao Tao crossed her arms and sneered. Higashio Motetsu didn't take her words to heart at all. He rubbed his chin, thinking about something. Seeing that he didn't react for a long time, Tao Tao thought that she had stepped on his sore spot and was a little annoyed. She shouldn't have tried to poke at his sore spot, but her heart was upset because he still cared so much about Chu Qingyan. The two conflicting emotions in her heart made her very depressed. She lifted her foot and stomped on his foot. Higashio Motetsu didn't notice and was stepped on by her. His heart was filled with anger and he reached out to grab the little witch who was about to turn and leave. Tao Tao angrily wanted to throw him away, but she didn't expect to be caught by him as soon as she turned around. He dragged her all the way to the side. She struggled to break free from him, but he was too strong and couldn't move her hand at all. She was a little discouraged. Looking at his back, he seemed to be emitting an aura that couldn't be ignored. His whole body seemed to be suppressing his anger. She remembered what she had done just now and couldn't help but feel guilty. She could only stumble and let him drag her along. Until they walked into a small alley, he threw her against the wall. Her elbow hit the wall and she gritted her teeth in pain. But she didn't dare to make a sound because she knew that he was on the verge of anger. She bit her lip and looked at him. At this moment, Higashio Motetsu's two hands were on either side of her, confining her in this small space to prevent her from escaping later. His eyes were staring at her. The distance between the two was so close that their breaths mingled. But Higashio Motetsu, who was at the top of his head, didn't notice how ambiguous the two of them were and how their posture made one's imagination run wild. Tao Tao, who was worried that she had angered him, didn't notice it either. She was wholeheartedly thinking about how to reduce his anger to the minimum. Tao Tao, have you had enough? Higashio Motetsu gritted his teeth and glared at her. Tao Tao's momentum weakened and she couldn't say anything for a long time. But at this moment, Higashio Motetsu, who had fainted from anger, didn't want to get any reason from her. He directly fired at her. How long are you going to be unreasonable for? These words seemed to ignite the grievances that Tao Tao had felt when she chased after him these days. She suddenly raised her head and questioned, I'm unreasonable. How am I being unreasonable? Was it wrong for her to like him? Along the way, she threw away her ladylike modesty and followed him around. Higashio Motetsu, you stinky man. You're too bad, too bad. Seeing that she was suddenly like a cat with its fur standing on end, Higashio Motetsu's anger hadn't subsided yet. He felt that it was beneath his dignity to argue with a girl, so he wanted to straighten up and ignore her. But inadvertently, he saw that her eyes were slightly red. He suddenly froze, as if something in his heart had been touched. This feeling didn't seem unfamiliar to him. He suddenly felt a little upset and forgot to withdraw his hand. In the end, he sighed. Okay. You're not in the wrong. You're not unreasonable, okay? When Tao Tao heard his perfunctory tone, she felt even more wronged and her eyes reddened even more. What do you mean? Are you pitying me? Are you patronizing me? You bastard. Higashio Motetsu took a deep breath. Sure enough, no matter who you offend, you shouldn't offend a woman. But when he saw her baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, he couldn't bear it. He didn't know when his anger had dissipated. He controlled his temper and softly coaxed her without him noticing. Okay, why are you throwing a tantrum? You're already an adult, but you're still acting like a child. I won't hold it against you for stepping on me and throwing a tantrum at me for no reason. At this time, Tao Tao felt that he was no longer angry. If it was according to their past interactions, this matter would be over. But she still felt wronged and climbed up the pole. She puffed up her cheeks and complained, "But you yelled at me just now." Higashio Motetsu heard this and felt a headache coming on. So in the end, he was the victim in the wrong. "I apologize. I won't be angry with you in the future, okay?" Tao Tao pouted. "This matter can't be let go just like that. You have to compensate me." "Compensate?" Higashio Motetsu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was the one who was stepped on, and in the end, he still had to compensate her. But for some reason, when he saw her like this, he couldn't get angry at all. He raised his eyebrows in amusement. "How do you want me to compensate you?" Tao Tao rolled her eyes and said straightforwardly, "I don't want anything. Hug me." "What?" He thought that he had heard wrongly and stared at her in disbelief. "Hug." Tao Tao's voice had the soft and adorable sound of a kitten. Higashio Motetsu looked at her moist eyes and his heartbeat suddenly became chaotic. Chapter 1563. He gave a low cough and looked away, trying to find a topic to change the topic. "Are you hungry? Let's find a place to eat first." As soon as he said that, Tao Tao opened her arms and hugged him, burying her face in his chest. His hand was still on the wall and the two of them were so close. This hug caught him off guard. The girl's soft body was pressed against his firm chest and her unique fragrance made his body stiffen. Tao Tao hugged him tightly. This was the only time she had succeeded after so many sneak attacks. "Higashio Motetsu, you're too bad. You're always bullying people," she complained in a low muffled voice. Higashio Motetsu was completely stunned. He wanted to push her away, pry her away, or pull her away by her collar. Hearing her words, he blurted out without thinking, "How did this young master bully you?" He was a man and the thing he disdained the most was to bully girls. "Who told you not to answer me?" She was referring to when they were on the street. Higashio Motetsu thought for a long time before he understood what she meant. This young master was thinking about something at that time. "How could I care about your random thoughts?" I don't care. You were even fierce to me just now." Tao Tao rubbed against his chest, not giving up. He really didn't know what to do with her. His hands were stiff at both sides. He didn't know whether to push her away or not. "Let go of your hands first. We can talk things over." Tao Tao snorted, "I have nothing to say to you. Don't talk. I'm righteous." Higashio Motetsu was angered by her words. Luckily they were in a remote place, otherwise they would have attracted a crowd. Forget it, he was a magnanimous person. He wouldn't argue with her. Being hugged wouldn't hurt a piece of flesh. However, when he was really silent, she was dissatisfied again. "How hard do you want me to work for you to look at me?" Tao Tao asked in a righteous manner, but there was a faint loneliness that was hard to detect. When these words came out, he was stunned again. He couldn't answer this question. "Why aren't you talking?" the person in his arms impatiently asked. He sighed. "Didn't you forbid this young master from speaking just now? Let's see who can stand you in the future." The person in his arms became restless. I'll cling to you. In order to prevent her from saying anything else, he deliberately threatened, "If you don't hug me properly, I'm leaving." Finally, they settled down, and the world became peaceful again. However, she tugged at his clothes as if she was venting her dissatisfaction. She tugged at his clothes like a child who could not get her candy and was expressing her grievances. He sighed faintly in his heart, and a faint light flashed across his phoenix eyes. Then, as if he had compromised, he slowly reached out and hugged her back. "All right, stop fooling around. This young master will take you to eat roast duck later." Tao Tao was stunned for a moment before the corners of her mouth curled up. What an unexpected gain. I want to eat too. If you're not afraid of getting fat, it's up to you. The setting sun elongated their shadows, intertwined with each other, as if they would never be separated. Sometimes, compromising was the beginning of the fall. It was just that whether they could walk together, and whether they could walk to the end, it was all unknown. On the other side, Jinshin walked up to a large tree by himself, his entire being immersed in a deep sense of conflict. Hearing the footsteps behind him, Jin Xian didn't turn back and asked, "Shining, do I look like a coward?" Shining, who had been worried about him, was stunned when she heard his question. Then, she immediately shook her head, realizing that he couldn't see, and said firmly, "No, you're not a coward. In my heart, you've always been a man of indomitable spirit." "Is that so? But I don't think I'm as good as you say. I'm avoiding responsibility and making everything develop in the worst direction." The scene he saw just now was like a flash of light in front of him. He raised his hand and slammed it on the tree trunk. Leaves fell on him, and the pain on the back of his hand couldn't reduce the guilt in his heart. Shining screamed and ran to his side. Seeing that the back of his hand was bleeding, she quickly took out a handkerchief and carefully bandaged his wound. As she bandaged it, she complained, "Even if you're unhappy, you can't vent your anger on your own body." Jin Xian looked at Shining blankly. "Because other than this, I don't know what else to do." After Shining finished bandaging his wound, she looked up and fixed her gaze on him. "Jin Xian, there are many things I don't understand, but I know that every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. The lives of the Japanese people now are not caused by you. You don't have to bear the responsibility for others. But the blood of the Murong family flows in my body. I am a member of the Japanese people. My mother taught me when I was young that when I grew up, I had to bear the responsibility of protecting the people. I had to treat them well and love them. But," Jin Xian clenched his hands and said hatefully, "but because of my family's revenge, I didn't want to return. I let the Yu clan bully the people. Even if I'm back now, I only care about revenge. I don't want to bear the responsibility that originally belonged to me. If I'm not cowardly and selfish, then what am I?" Shining immediately pulled his hand. Seeing the wound open again and staining the handkerchief red, her eyes gradually became red. "Jin Xian, is there any use in blaming yourself? Is there any use in hurting yourself? Can this drive the Yu clan out and let the people live a peaceful life again?" Jin Xian pursed his lips and looked at her, gradually calming down. "If it can't, then think of a way. How can we reduce the damage to the minimum? How can we save the people from the fire and water? I'm stupid, I'm not as smart as Master to help you solve the problem. I can only tell you that no matter what happens, I will stand by your side and support you. I won't leave you." Shining held his uninjured hand and said sincerely. Jin Xian's heart was incomparably moved. He held her hand back. "Thank you, Shining. You're not stupid. Compared to me, you're much smarter. But I didn't help you with anything." Shining was a little embarrassed. "No, you've already helped me. I know what to do now." Jin Xian looked into her eyes and said solemnly. "Is that so?" Shining was a little excited. "Then what do you plan to do next?" "We have to go back and find Master." Jin Xian didn't say it out loud as he held her hand and walked back. Shining nodded. "Okay, but when we go back, I have to ask Miss Cheng for some medicine and bandage it for you first. Otherwise, it will leave a scar." Jin Xian didn't care. "It doesn't matter, I'm not a girl like you." Shining shook her head and nagged, "No, if there's a scar, you won't look good holding a sword." She didn't understand the hatred of the country. She was only worried about his injuries. Jin Xian wanted to say that the scars on the man's body were more like meritorious deeds, but seeing her so nervous, he let her be. Chapter 1564. When Jin Xian knelt in the hall and stated his intention to reclaim the Japanese territory, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but look at her big ice block. Sure enough, everything was as she had expected. Jin Xian would make such a decision. However, she was a little puzzled. She was clearly closer to Jin Xian than he was, so why did the big ice block understand Jin Xian better than she did? What Chu Qingyan didn't understand was that sometimes, men understood men better. Moreover, in order to eliminate all the uncertain factors around her, Xiao Su had spent some time to understand Jin Xian. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed Jin Xian to enter the court as an official. If this is your decision, we won't object. But what do you want us to help you with? Xiao Su asked directly. Jin Xian kowtowed to the ground. This subordinate boldly requests that Master and His Highness can lend this subordinate a hand. This subordinate is alone in this body, only this life. With this as an oath, no matter what the result is, this subordinate is willing to dedicate this life to Master in this life, the next life, and the life after that. This oath was very heavy. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su couldn't help but look at each other. At this time, Xining also stood up and knelt beside Jin Xian. She kowtowed. Master, this servant also boldly requests that Master and His Highness can help Jin Xian. This servant is willing to do anything to repay you. Jin Xian turned his head, his eyes slightly red. Xining, thank you. Xining smiled. Between us, is there still a need for thanks? Jin Xian didn't answer. He just reached out and held her hand. Chu Qingyan did not expect the usually shy young lady to be so willing to go to such lengths for Jinxin. She turned around and teased Big Ice Block. Is this what they mean by, a friend in need is a friend indeed? It turns out that this person hasn't even married yet, but she's already helping an outsider. Xining blushed. Master. Jin Xian isn't an outsider. Yes, he's not an outsider. Chu Qingyan continued to tease her. Xining shyly moved behind Jin Xian and covered her face, causing Chu Qingyan to laugh loudly. Xiao Su looked at this unreliable wife of his and shook his head. He raised his hand and gestured for the two of them to stand up. Jin Xian, your master has already considered this matter for you. It's just that it's not easy for her to bring it up. After all, we're not citizens of North Korea. Only if you bring it up yourself can we help you with the plan. This isn't as simple as your previous family feud. This involves politics and the people's livelihood. Chu Qingyan also regained her composure. She nodded and continued her ice block's words. Jin Xian, I'm very happy that you're willing to take on your responsibilities. Even a hot-blooded person wouldn't be able to tolerate such a cruel side of the Yu clan, let alone a Japanese. Although you've lived outside for more than 10 years, the Japanese blood still flows in your veins. I'll leave my words here. No matter what help you need, Her Highness and I are willing to support and cooperate with you. So, you can rest assured and boldly do it now. Jin Xian looked emotional. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Her Highness. Xining was also emotional and grateful. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Her Highness. But there's one thing, Xiao Su said, attracting everyone's attention. He locked his gaze on Jin Xian and said slowly, this matter requires you to take on the responsibility yourself. Since you want to take responsibility, then show us results. Jin Xian nodded heavily. This subordinate understands. I will definitely not disappoint you. Chu Qingyan smiled with relief. Well, since we've decided to take back everything that belongs to the Japanese, then we have to prepare for battle. What do you plan to do next? Jin Xian didn't hesitate. This subordinate will need the help of the high priest and the others. After all, they've lived here for many years and know the Yu clan the best. We're new here, and there are many things that they don't know. Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. I remember that the high priest is also one of your enemies. Are you going to let him out so easily? Jin Xian said firmly. Master, in the face of national interests, personal hatred can be put aside. Moreover, this subordinate has the same goal as them, so I believe that they won't dare to play any tricks. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with admiration. He really didn't misjudge him. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. She felt that Jin Xian had really grown up and could take charge of things on his own. She was very happy. Half an hour later, the high priest and elder Zhuo were brought to the hall. Jin Xian sat at the head of the table. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan retreated to the second row. On the other side sat Sima Jun and Ji Linyang, as well as Xiao Yao, who had come to join in the fun because he had nothing to do. The high priest and elder Zhuo didn't know why Jin Xian had them brought here. They looked at him warily. Murong Yunxian, what do you want to do to us? I'll say it right here. If you want to kill us or torture us, do as you please. Why don't you just stab us and give us a quick death? Although the high priestess was already an old woman, her awe-inspiring righteousness showed that she had been a fierce person when she was young. Elder Zhuo motioned for the high priest to calm down and said to Jin Xian, young sect master, why did you call us here? After interacting with them on the way here, Elder Zhuo felt that he had a certain understanding of them. They wouldn't have brought him here for no reason. Moreover, if they really wanted to kill him, they would have done so long ago. Chu Qingyan felt that Elder Zhuo was quite perceptive. She turned to ask Jin Xian how to answer. Jin Xian said calmly, we went out for a walk today and discovered some things. Now, let's hear what you have to say. What is the situation with the Yu clan and the Ri clan? Why doesn't the Yu clan treat the Ri clan's people well? The high priest and elder Zhuo looked at each other in surprise. They thought that Jin Xian didn't care about the Ri clan's situation at all. They didn't expect him to take the initiative to bring it up today. Elder Zhuo was afraid that he would change his mind and hurriedly answered, ever since the Murong clan's accident more than 10 years ago, the Yang Yen sect has been in decline. A few years ago, the Yu clan attacked the Ri clan and defeated us in one fell swoop. After occupying our territory, we were no longer able to protect the people. The high priest also calmed down and continued Elder Zhuo's words, the Yu clan and the Ri clan have been like fire and water for hundreds of years. They see each other as enemies, so the Yu clan occupied our territory. It's fortunate that they didn't kill the Ri clan's people. It's just that every time we see them bully our people, we can't help but want to rush into the Hidden Moon Palace and cut the culprits into pieces. Elder Zhuo sighed, young sect master, you should have seen the Yu clan's people today. How cruel their methods are. It's not just what you see on the surface. Spiritual suppression and martial suppression. In the long run, the Ri clan will be destroyed sooner or later. Jin Xian pursed his lips, his expression extremely ugly. The high priest snorted, Elder Zhuo, why are you saying so much to him? He won't help us. Elder Zhuo looked at Jin Xian and shook his head helplessly. What if we're willing to help the Ri clan drive the Yu clan out? The high priest and Elder Zhuo were stunned when they heard the words, true faith.